Bitter encounter, enemies meeting face to face. His martial spirit had just been formed. If this terrifying bolt of lightning were to strike his martial spirit, something he had condensed with great difficulty, it might be smashed to pieces. He might truly turn into trash forever. However, all of a sudden, something strange occurred. The azure dragon in his dantian opened its mouth wide and swallowed up the lightning that was rampaging about within his meridians. The lightning rumbled ceaselessly around it, but the azure dragon martial spirit did not sustain any injuries at all. This scene caused Xiao Chen to feel that it was incomparably weird. Could his cultivation of the purple thunder divine incantation have caused a mutation in the azure dragon martial spirit that allows it to absorb electricity? Cousin Xiao Chen, are you alright? Xiao Yulan asked worriedly. She felt guilty as this might not have happened had she warned him earlier. The electrical energy within his body began to disperse, leaving behind injured meridians that hadn't sustained any major damage in its wake, which Xiao Chen could repair before long. I'm fine. That lightning may have seemed frightening, but it did not contain much energy. Cousin Yulan, you don't have to worry. Xiao Yulan did not seem to believe him. She held Xiao Chen's wrist to check his meridians, heaving a relieved breath shortly after. However, she felt suspicious. The lightning did not seem as simple as Xiao Chen had described it, but she would be unable to find an answer anytime soon. Xiao Chen smiled. Cousin, don't think too much, let's see what's in this embroidered box. Xiao Yulan put down the suspicions in her heart and took out the thing inside the box. She spoke only after looking at it for a while. This is a superior grade yellow ranked martial technique. It's a pity that it is lightning attributed. A lightning attributed superior grade yellow ranked martial technique. Of all things, this was a treasure that was now delivered to his hands on a silver platter. He had just condensed his martial spirit and had not practiced any martial technique yet. The main attribute of his azure dragon martial spirit was that of wood, but after cultivating the purple thunder divine incantation, this azure dragon seemed to have gained some lightning attributes. Cousin, can you give me this martial technique to practice? Xiao Chen said. Xiao Yulan nodded her head in response. I intended to give this to you. It's just that. This martial technique is lightning attributed whereas your martial spirit is fire attributed, so its power might decrease. Xiao Chen received the martial technique secret manual and smiled. That's not a problem, I still have not learned any martial techniques. If I can learn one, then it is one more I know. Superior grade yellow ranked martial technique Divine Thunder Break. After successfully training in it, one could release a blast of electrical energy. Xiao Chen circulated his essence according to the martial technique manual, and an electrical energy gathered onto his right hand. He was very content with this technique. He hurriedly stopped training it, for it was not yet the time to test it out. Cousin Yulan, should we return or proceed forward? Xiao Chen asked. He had already obtained a superior grade yellow ranked martial technique and was satisfied, but if they continued on, they might run into some other dangers. Xiao Yulan ignored Xiao Chen's statement and continued to search around every corner of the four walls. After a while, she spoke up. Looks like we have to go back. After searching for such a long time, I am still unable to find the secret passage of this stone room. This aligned with Xiao Chen's original intentions. He put away the martial technique manual in a safe place and smiled. Let's go, this place is very strange. Let's not wait for anything to happen. Who knew? When Xiao Chen finished saying that, the stone table in the stone room started to move, slowly moving in an anti-clockwise motion. Xiao Yulan gripped her sword and alertly watched the table turn. When the table stopped turning, the stone wall on the right side suddenly revealed a stone door. Xiao Chen wanted to slap himself. Right when he said that this place was strange, this strange thing occurred. Xiao Yulan lit up her fire starter and threw it forward. She discovered that aside from a tunnel, there was nothing else. After hesitating for a while, Xiao Yulan slowly followed the tunnel and descended, leaving Xiao Chen with no other choice than to follow her. Hey, cousin, why did you follow me down? Didn't you say that you didn't want to go? Xiao Yulan gently smiled. Xiao Chen scratched his head. I followed you to take a look, and the road is not blocked, so it should be simple to turn back and return. Rumble. As though it was answering Xiao Chen's words, the hole behind them was sealed shut. It almost drove him mad the instant it happened. How uncanny. Seeing Xiao Chen's depressed visage, Xiao Yulan found it funny. Alright, since the road is sealed shut now, you can't turn back either. Xiao Chen smiled bitterly. Let's hope that there is an exit ahead. They traveled in silence. After a certain distance, their field of vision abruptly widened, and a huge stone platform appeared in front of their eyes. The moonstone pillar in the middle of the stone platform immediately caught their attention. From the memories of this body, Xiao Chen could imagine the immense value of this moonstone. However, they soon noticed the Zhang clan members behind the thin yellow barrier. Xiao Chen's appearance caused the person in blue to become anxious. At this moment, the thin yellow barrier was only the size of half a person. While a regular person would not be able to squeeze in, he could not help but feel apprehensive. Elder Zhang, quickly go in, the cultivation of those two are at most martial master. We absolutely cannot let them snatch away the spirit weapon on the moonstone. Elder Zhang knew that the matter was urgent. He took 2 steps back and ferociously leapt forward, like a carp leaping through water. His body athletically went through the hole that was about the size of a wash basin. After he landed, he somersaulted and immediately stood up. The cultivation of Elder Zhang had already reached the peak of Martial Grand Master long ago. A Martial Grand Master had the capability to easily kill tens of Martial Masters, and what more with Elder Zhang's peak Martial Grand Master cultivation, killing them would be very simple. Elder Zhang slowly walked over and clearly saw their appearances, smiling. I was wondering who it was, so it is the second young master of the Xiao clan and the granddaughter of the Xiao clan's first elder. Xiao Yulan stepped forward and gave a preemptive explanation. We are not interested in snatching away this moonstone, we merely got trapped when we tried to return. Since you are aware of our identities, please let us go. Xiao Chen perspired heavily. This cousin of his indeed had a strong cultivation, but her brain seemed to have short-circuited. The Xiao clan and Zhang clan had been enemies for a long time. Furthermore, if he killed the both of them here, the rest of the world would be none the wiser. Even without the moonstone, this Elder Zhang would not have let them go. Indeed, Elder Zhang just laughed aloud. Little girl, you are so naive. You think that you actually dared to sneak attack me. How foolish. Halfway through his chiding remark, Elder Zhang sensed something dangerous. A red flower the size of a person had risen up behind him unnoticed, and its color was incomparably beautiful with countless of pollen falling gently from the petals. The toxic plant, poinsettia. Xiao Yulan's martial spirit was actually the poinsettia, which was one of the 5 deadly poisons. As long as it drew blood, it would be a fatal strike, and its pollen could affect the nerves, effectively paralyzing someone without any signs and causing their battle prowess to significantly decrease. If the poisoned individual had an open wound and the pollen entered said gap in the body, the poisoned individual would likely die within 10 breaths. Xiao Chen did not expect Xiao Yulan's martial spirit to be the poinsettia, nor did he anticipate for her to have schemed so deeply. No one would have thought that a martial master would make the first move against a peak martial grand master. Furthermore, this martial master looked like a sweet little girl. A cultivator was at their weakest in the period of time when the martial spirit had left their body. When Xiao Chen saw that red flower crop up all of a sudden, he immediately understood what to do and made the first move as well. A purple flame condensed with a flicker on his palm. Circulating essence to his legs, Xiao Chen bent his legs and abruptly dashed forward, generating a sound as he tore through the air before striking Elder Zhang with his palm. In the instant the pollen invaded his body, Elder Zhang sought to kill Xiao Yulan first before she had the chance to activate poinsettia's poisonous nature. He may have appeared to be cornered in that position, but when he saw Xiao Chen flying over, the corners of his mouth curled up to reveal a cold smile. This brat was merely a junior in the martial disciple realm, yet he dared to take action against him. He split apart a portion of the essence that was suppressing poinsettia's poison and struck out against Xiao Chen's palm. Xiao Chen was blasted backwards in the aftermath, because the punch of a martial grand master was not something that he was able to withstand at present. Vomiting a mouthful of fresh blood, he could vaguely sense that his heart or lungs might have sustained damage. Elder Zhang did not even bother to look at Xiao Chen, who had been blasted back. He was about to make another move when he discovered that the flame from Xiao Chen's palm was still sticking to his fist and was continuously consuming the essence he had condensed on it. He was alarmed. What a domineering flame. Quickly allocating another portion of essence to surround the flames, he applied firm control over the essence with his consciousness and had to tightly clench his fist before he could put out the flames. Xiao Yulan took advantage of this opportunity to successfully retrieve the martial spirit that had left her body. Seeing Xiao Chen vomit blood, killing intent began to pool in her eyes. She drew her sword and stared coldly at Elder Zhang without any emotions showing on her face, as though he was already a dead man in her eyes. Inferior grade profound ranked spirit weapon, Broken Moon Sword. I did not expect the only profound ranked spirit weapon of the Xiao clan to be in your hands. Looks like you definitely have to die today. Looking at the sword in Xiao Yulan's hands, Elder Zhang was astonished. Xiao Yulan held the sword in her hands, and a dance of petals in the breeze around her was swiftly followed by a sword flash flying towards Elder Zhang. Elder Zhang did not dare to take any risk as he dispersed half of his essence into his hands and feet, using the other half to stave off the poison. The two of them began to move faster and faster. Initially, Xiao Chen, who was lying on the ground, could clearly see the battle between them. Soon, he could only see blurry shadows amidst the plentiful petals. This level of battle was no longer something that he could take part in, and he never expected that Xiao Yulan's speed was actually this impressive. Despite the difference in cultivation realms, she was able to fight evenly with Elder Zhang. Xiao Chen shifted his gaze away and looked at the sword hilt that was located on top of the moonstone pillar. This spirit weapon was probably the object of their desire, so he decided to grab it before they could. Xiao Chen slowly stood up and cautiously walked towards the stone pillar. When the person in blue, who was doing his best to widen the hole in the thin barrier, saw Xiao Chen heading towards the moonstone pillar, he felt anxious in his heart. Yet, he could not make a single move. He loudly shouted, "Elder Zhang, you trash. You can't even deal with two little kids. If I am not able to get my hands on this spirit weapon, after we get back, you will be the first person I kill." Elder Zhang, who is currently fighting with Xiao Yulan, found it difficult to talk about his troubles. The spirit weapon of this girl was incredibly strange, as it surrounded him with flower petals that made him incapable of exhibiting more than half of his usual combat ability. Furthermore, at this moment, he had to hold his breath, not daring to breathe. Let alone that, with poinsettia's poison, he was only able to utilize about a quarter of his strength as a peak martial grandmaster. When he heard the words of the person in blue, Elder Zhang hardened his heart. When Xiao Yulan pierced her sword at him, he did not dodge, instead punching out at her temple with precise purpose. This girl wanted to fight with him so badly it seemed, suffering heavy injuries to try to get him to bleed, to activate poinsettia's fatal poison. She was treating it as though he had no way to force out the poison. Just when Elder Zhang's fist was about to land, Xiao Yulan twisted her body in midair, creating two more Xiao Yulans that looked exactly the same. The one he struck immediately became countless scattered red petals. Elder Zhang was not surprised. He smiled and roared shortly after exposing her flaws. "This should be your trump card, inferior grade profound ranked martial technique, flower clones. However, it is time to end this farce, beast soul possession." A phantom image of an ape appeared behind Elder Zhang's body. In a flash, Elder Zhang turned into some kind of human ape monster. This was the ability of martial grand masters, martial spirit possession. After the martial spirit possessed the body, one's speed and strength would increase by several folds. Sometimes, someone would even obtain the special abilities of their martial spirit. Elder Zhang used his right hand, which had extended its length by an additional half, and clenched his fist in midair. A bolt of lightning struck one of Xiao Yulan's clones, turning it into a scatter of red petals with a loud boom. Laughing weirdly, Elder Zhang jumped like an ape and extended his two arms, grabbing at the last clone. Boom. The last clone was also shattered into countless red petals. Within an instant, the surrounding space became filled with the red poinsettia petals. Elder Zhang was overwhelmed with amazement and looked behind him, spotting another 7 clones behind him amidst dancing petals. Elder Zhang appeared to be flustered and mumbled, "That's not possible, even the highest realm of flower clones can only create 10 clones. Given your age, how could you have trained to that realm? Xiao Yulan coldly said. Beast soul possession, this requires all the essence in your body to be activated. The poison of my poinsettia should have taken effect by now, it's over. 7 shadows came flying in from different directions, and the slender broken moon sword merged together with the petals, intertwining with each other. Without Elder Zhong's essence to restrict it, poinsettia's poison started to work on his nerves, causing his limbs to twitch. Gucci. The 7 shadows merged back together into Xiao Yulan as she appeared behind Elder Zhong's back. The petals were dancing behind her as the broken moon sword streaked across his back, inflicting a hideous wound. As blood flowed from it, poinsettia's poison completely came into effect, sentencing Elder Zhong to certain death within 10 breaths of time. However, just at this moment, Elder Zhong suddenly turned around and grabbed the broken moon sword with his hands. Even if I die, I will drag you down with me. Elder Zhong laughed out maniacally, ignoring the pain in his right hand as he gripped the broken moon sword tightly and gathered all the essence in his body into his left hand. His final strike before his death, medial grade yellow ranked martial technique, reckless heavy punch. This punch was incomparably swift and fierce, completely exceeding Xiao Yulan's expectations. The full force of a martial grand master struck her shoulder heavily and sent her flying back toward the stone pillar. Xiao Chen, who was preparing to draw the spirit weapon, was startled, hurriedly catching Xiao Yulan. Cousin, are you alright? Xiao Yulan's face was pale as she spoke somewhat weakly. Quickly run, that man in blue is about to open up the hole. He carried Xiao Yulan on his back, turned his head to see the man in blue anxiously trying to break through the thin yellow barrier, and then looked once again at the spirit weapon on the moonstone pillar. Even if he tried to return back through the route from which they came, he would not be able to break open that stone wall with his current strength. It would only be a path to death. If he pulled out the spirit weapon, who knows, maybe he could use the strength of the spirit weapon to help carve a path out, making his escape easy. Xiao Chen stopped hesitating. He took 2 steps forward and gripped the sword handle. He tugged firmly at it, but to his surprise, it came out with incomparable ease. However, this spirit weapon did not seem like a divine weapon. And upon closer inspection, it was actually just a meter-long broken sword. Before he had time to curse, the moonstone pillar exploded apart with a loud boom and turned into numerous fragments. Xiao Chen reacted quickly and grabbed at some of the fragments with his hands before falling downwards. After the moonstone pillar exploded, the stone platform below them was destroyed too, thus Xiao Chen had fallen down, together with Xiao Yulan, who he was carrying. No. Seeing the spirit weapon snatched from right under his nose and the moonstone pillar breaking into pieces, the man in blue shouted out loudly. That thin yellow barrier suddenly seemed to emit a great repelling force, causing the man in blue to be blasted out. The hole in the barrier rapidly mended itself. The man in blue had been watching as all these things played out all of a sudden. He felt unresigned, vomited blood, and then fainted. In a narrow stone room, Xiao Yulan closed her eyes as she leaned back on the wall. Her complexion was very pale as she kept murmuring in a low voice. Xiao Chen frowned and looked at the hole about 10 meters above them, at a loss for what to do. Cousin Xiao Chen, am I dying? Xiao Yulan opened her eyes and inquired weakly. She had been struck by Elder Zhong's strongest technique earlier. The punch of a peak martial grand master augmented by the reckless heavy punch martial technique had such an enormous force behind it that it almost shattered all her meridians. Even worse, the martial spirit in her body had no way to treat this damage. Xiao Chen walked over, sat down by her side, and smiled. Stop talking nonsense, cousin, and rest well. This pit is only about 10 meters deep, so I will think of a way to get us out as soon as possible. When Xiao Yulan heard that, a bitter smile appeared on her pale face. If you are able to leave, then leave by yourself, you don't have to bother with me. Since the day I was born, I have been destined to bring misfortune to the people around me. I should have died long ago. Xiao Chen smiled. Stop saying silly things, there is no way I will abandon you here. As long as I am alive, I will not let you die. There was not a single trace of redness on Xiao Yulan's face, and her lips parted in a murmur. Don't you think that it was strange that I was cultivating alone on Seven Horn Mountain all this time? TL notes. The author is not trying to say that Xiao Yulan did not feel anything. He was trying to express that she is now anemic, probably due to loss of blood. It is indeed strange, but everyone has their own secrets to hide. I don't think it is good to dig into the secrets of others. Xiao Chen squinted while pursing his lips. When I was 5 years old, I had already condensed my martial soul. I remember the horrified expression on my father's face. I was very young back then, so I could not understand why, and I only felt that the flower in my body was very pretty. I used to have an elder sister. I did not understand the situation then and showed poinsettia to her. After she got poisoned by it, she fell down and suffered an injury that made her bleed. Thus, she was poisoned to death by me like this. Ever since then, I finally understood why my father did not like me. I am poisonous. The bowls and cups that one used to use, even the stool that I sat on, have to be cleaned multiple times. I could not even play with the other children. Cousin Xiao Chen, do you remember? We used to play house together when we were young, but when my martial soul appeared, my father forbade me from playing with the others. I was very upset and would often hide somewhere to cry. When I was 8 years old, my father sent me to Seven Horn Mountain to cultivate. Ever since then, I've never left the mountain. And on occasion, my father sends some things up the mountain to me. Xiao Yulan spoke very slowly, as though she was reminiscing about the distant past. Her pale smile suddenly brightened. I rarely meet people on the mountain. When I first met cousin, I actually did not recognize you and even injured you. I was very afraid then, afraid that you would call me a freak. You have no idea. All these years, I have been killing all these spirit beasts on the mountain, and there were many times where even I thought that I was a freak. Xiao Chen felt grief in his heart, abruptly interrupting her. Cousin Yulan, you are not a freak. You are very pretty, so much more so than the girls below the mountain. A freak would not give me a bottle of medicine to treat my wounds. A trace of redness appeared on Xiao Yulan's pale face, but she wasn't fully convinced. Really? Xiao Chen replied seriously, really? Cousin, stop speaking for now, have a good rest first. Perhaps she believed Xiao Chen's words, or maybe she was very tired, but Xiao Yulan slowly closed her eyes as her breathing became calm and even. Xiao Chen raised his head to gain a visual of the hole above them, shaking his head helplessly as he took out the broken sword. There was a faint glow on the body of this azure sword. Xiao Chen held the handle and brandished it, waving it around for a while. He could not feel any strong might emitting from the sword, and even infusing it with essence yielded no reaction. Could this just be an ordinary sword? Xiao Chen felt a little dispirited and put away the sword. Afterwards, he took out the moonstone he grabbed by chance and grinned wide, because at least this moonstone was not fake. With such a large piece, it would not be a problem to exchange this for 100,000 taels of gold. However, the critical problem now was a way out, and a 10 meters pit was not something an inferior grade martial disciple could jump out of just like that. Even with Xiao Yulan's cultivation, it would not be possible. Furthermore, her meridians were currently injured, rendering her incapable of using her essence. Sister, Yulan did not. On purpose. Xiao Yulan seemed to be having a nightmare, the tight knit of her eyebrows speaking leagues about a trauma. Looking pale as a ghost, her murmurs appeared to have no end in sight. But at the end of the day, considering Xiao Chen had been a shut in his entire life without much contact to women prior to his ascension, he was at a loss to what to do. Had it been otherwise, this kind of situation should not have disconcerted him as much as it did. Xiao Chen cultivated the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation, which was, despite its tyrannical nature, still a legitimate immortal cultivation technique. However, it had one major drawback in this world. There was simply no immortal chi in this world. Even so, if he used his essence, it would definitely have a trace of a similar healing effect to the immortal chi. Xiao Chen had also received a punch from Elder Zhang earlier and injured his heart and lungs, but it took merely a bit of nourishing by essence before it was completely healed. It was definitely effective. He decided to give it a try when he had thought of this idea. He then slowly straightened out Xiao Yulan's body and placed his hand on her shoulder, and circulated the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation, threads of gentle essence slowly pouring into Xiao Yulan's body through his palm and fingers. His consciousness followed the essence closely and entered into Xiao Yulan's meridians, but all that lay in store for him was shock as he saw how severely her meridians had been damaged. There were scars of varying sizes in the 8 major meridians, and they had many gorges and were very distorted in shape. Some of the minor meridians were only connected to each other by a thread, seeming to be on the verge of snapping apart at any moment. It was a shocking sight. Xiao Chen carefully controlled the essence and nourished the injured meridians. The nourishing sensation seemed to placate Xiao Yulin's pained expression, which began to regain color. She could feel a certain warmth moving gently around in her meridians, inordinately amazing her. As she knew Xiao Chen was the one treating her, a tinge of red pervaded her face. Xiao Chen used his consciousness to control the essence in Xiao Yulin's body, making it circulate a whole cycle before sending his consciousness even deeper. The scars seemed to have recovered significantly everywhere he went. He controlled his essence to head towards Xiao Yulin's dantian, where a beautiful poinsettia resided. Right now, it seemed dispirited and listless, as though it was withered. "Cousin Xiao Chen, that's enough." The voice suddenly entered his brain, startling Xiao Chen. It took a long time for him to react. This was the sound of Xiao Yulin's consciousness speaking directly to him. Immediately after, he realized that he had not asked for her permission to send his consciousness into her. It was bad etiquette to enter another person's body in the way he did, even more so if the counterpart was a girl. Xiao Chen withdrew his consciousness and essence before getting up, but he felt dizzy and sat down again. He laughed bitterly, as it turned out that treating others was a very tiresome matter. Xiao Yulan asked worriedly, "Are you alright, cousin Xiao Chen?" "I'm fine, don't worry, cousin. I just exhausted a lot of my essence. I will be fine after some rest. Are you feeling better yet?" Xiao Chen stated. Xiao Yulan blushed and replied in a soft voice, "Thank you, cousin Xiao Chen, I am feeling much better." "Then that's good. After a few more days of treatment, cousin's injuries should be completely recovered." Time went by very fast in the stone room. In the blink of an eye, 6 days had already passed. The rations the two of them had taken with them had already been spent 2 days ago. Although it was not a big issue for martial cultivators to not eat or drink for a few days, if it went on for an extended period of time, they would still die. In these 6 days, Xiao Yulin's body had pretty much recovered all the way through. Despite that, her body still seemed a little weak due to lacking nourishment. Every day, after treating Xiao Yulin's injuries, Xiao Chen would cultivate. He was already able to freely use the Divine Thunder Break. He also raised the amount of Purple Thunder True Fire he could conjure and consolidated his inferior grade martial disciple cultivation. Today was the day of the duel with Xiao Jian. If he was not able to get out, there was no telling what sort of rumors would spread outside. He raised his head to look at the hole 10 meters above them, feeling distraught and anxious. "Cousin Xiao Chen, can I take a look at the spirit weapon from the Moonstone Pillar?" Xiao Yulan asked weakly. Xiao Chen nodded his head. He took out the broken sword and handed it to Xiao Yulan. "This spirit weapon does not seem to be anything special. I have been trying for the past few days." Xiao Yulan did not say anything. Instead, she caressed the body of the sword and took out a green thread and dropped it onto the sword slowly. When it touched the blade of the sword, it split into 2 pieces. Shortly after, she took out a short sword from below her feet and slashed it at the sword, the result thereupon being a resounding crashing sound. The short sword was immediately bisected into 2 roughly cut pieces. It cuts threads with just a touch and slices through metal like mud. "This is no ordinary sword." Xiao Chen smiled. "Even so, it is not able to help us now. Unless it can help us fly up." Xiao Yulan smiled gently. "Who said it can't?" Xiao Chen only saw her leap up gently, rising about 3 meters up towards the top of the pit. Right as gravity picked up around her, she used the broken sword and struck it into the wall. The sword completely sank into the pit wall. Her right hand held onto the handle and, using that as a perch and propeller for momentum, her body found second wind in the air again. After a few renditions of this, she managed to escape the pit. Xiao Chen stood below, starting in shock. There was a clattering sound, generated as the sword made its way back down and hit the ground. Xiao Yulan shouted from up top, "Cousin, come up quickly, those people are gone already." Xiao Chen picked up the broken sword, feeling excited. He imitated Xiao Yulan and, after a few jumps, managed to escape the pit as well. As a breeze of fresh air swept over him with a deep caress, Xiao Chen felt the urge to shout out loudly. For some reason, the body of the dead elder Zhang did not rot. Xiao Chen could not care a whit about that and searched everywhere for any remaining broken pieces of moonstone and collected them all. The two of them returned through the pathway they came from. With the assistance of the broken sword, the stone wall that had been in their way in the past was effortlessly slashed open. Before descending the mountain, Xiao Chen invited Xiao Yulan to come with him. Xiao Yulan hesitated for a while before accepting the invitation. After being trapped in there with Xiao Chen, she already knew that today was the day of the duel with Xiao Jian. She was a little worried about Xiao Chen and had decided to go down the mountain to take a look. Xiao Clan, Martial Hall. At this moment, the huge martial hall was already filled with people, indicating that all the disciples of the younger generation had come to watch. Because of the rumors spread by the servants, there were a significant amount of people. Eldest young master, would this Xiao Chen not show up? A Xiao clan disciple that had a good relationship with Xiao Jian spoke from below the arena in the martial hall. Yes, I believe that Xiao Chen is too cowardly to show up. He's merely a piece of trash at the 9th grade of spirit refinement and actually dares to duel with the eldest young master. How insolent. Xiao Jian was dressed in a blue GI, making him look elegant and confident. However, he had a gloomy look on his face that made him seem extremely menacing. It's best if he shows up. If he does not, then there will no longer be a place for him in the Xiao clan. Indeed, what great guts this fellow has, to think that he actually dared to hit the eldest young master's face. He is simply just asking for trouble. Hitting his face. When Xiao Jian heard this, his gloomy face turned even more terrifying. In regards to his status, he was the person with the highest talent in cultivation amongst the younger generation of the Xiao clan. Before he was 18, he was already a peak martial disciple, a single step from becoming the youngest martial master in Mohe City. Xiao Chen was just a piece of trash, yet he actually dared to challenge him. Furthermore, he hit him in the face in front of everyone. What in the world was going on? Xiao Jian had already decided that if Xiao Chen dared to come, he would immediately cripple him, letting him truly taste regret. Time slowly went by, and the appointed time had already passed by 4 hours and Xiao Chen still had yet to make his appearance. The chatters of the crowd got louder and louder. Xiao Jian looked at the entrance, but there was no Xiao Chen in sight. He could not help but feel some frustration. Xiao Jian murmured to himself and proceeded towards the first elder of the Xiao clan, who presided over this duel. Martial uncle, Xiao Chen is still not here yet, should we send someone to find him? The Xiao clan's clan head, Xiao Shang, had already entered a closed-door seclusion cultivation in order to break through and become a martial saint. He had left the management of the Xiao clan's affairs to the first elder, Xiao Chang. For events such as this duel, Xiao Chang would preside over them as well. Xiao Chang coldly stated, "You think that I have not tried to find him in the past few days? The guards of Seven Horn Mountain told me that he went inside and has not left yet." When the surrounding people heard this, they found it incomparably strange. There were rank 2 spirit beasts even on the outskirts of Seven Horn Mountain, so if a 9th grade spirit refinement realm cultivator went inside, wouldn't they just be courting death? Haha, young Master Xiao, that fellow might have already died at the paws of a spirit beast. It looks like you don't have to personally take action anymore. Even after 7 days, he still hasn't come out. He is definitely dead. No wonder he had not shown up yet. Suddenly, a commotion broke out amongst the crowd alongside cries of surprise. Xiao Chen had arrived. Xiao Chen is here, he really is here. Who is the girl beside him? Do you guys know? I've never seen her. It is almost time for the duel, why did he bring a girl along? However, this girl is quite pretty. Xiao Chen just ignored their blabber and calmly walked towards the arena in the middle of the martial hall. Xiao Yulan followed by his side with a frown. She was not used to so many people paying attention to her. At first, Xiao Jian was shocked when he heard the news of Xiao Chen's arrival. After Xiao Chen arrived at the stage, however, Xiao Jian simply laughed coldly. "Brother Chen, I thought that the spirit beasts had already eaten you at Seven Horn Mountain. I never expected that you would be able to make your way out." Xiao Chen smiled gently. "Many thanks to elder brother for your concerns, But before we settle this, how could I allow myself to die? At this moment, Xiao Chang, who had been observing the course of events, suddenly widened his eyes. He looked at Xiao Yulan with a complex expression and walked over quickly and said, "Lan you are finally willing to coming down from the mountain, why didn't you tell me first?" Xiao Yulan said a little unnaturally, "I came down with cousin on the spur of the moment. I merely came to watch the duel today." Xiao Chang seemed like he had something he wanted to say, but he did not speak up in the end. In regards to Xiao Yulan, a deep sense of guilt had always been lodged in his heart. When she was small, he sent her to Seven-Horn Mountain because she could not control her own martial spirit. However, he watched her grow lonelier and lonelier as she grew older. Xiao Chang felt disgusted at himself. Was he too cruel? When Xiao Yulan was able to control her own martial spirit, Xiao Chang tried to persuade her to leave the mountains a few times. However, Xiao Yulan had been isolated from people for too long. No matter how he urged her, she still would not leave the mountain. "Uncle Chang, can we start now?" Xiao Jian said impatiently as he stood at the side. Xiao Chang recovered from his shock and said to Xiao Chen, "Are you ready?" Seeing Xiao Chen nod his head, Xiao Chang said in a deep voice, "Although this duel is a fight to the death, you are brothers, after all. I would like to emphasize that if one party admits his loss, the other party must stop. It is best that all grievances end with this. Xiao Jian, can you do this?" Xiao Jian nodded his head but smiled coldly in his heart. Killing Xiao Chen would dirty his hands, he would stop before that happened. What a joke. However, he had to think of a way to thoroughly cripple the cultivation of this reckless fellow. The two of them got onto the arena, stood at their respective corners, and paid their respects to each other. This duel had officially started and the atmosphere in the martial hall also started to turn heavy. Xiao Jian stood on the arena, slowly raising his killing intent. He did not intend to drag out this fight and was prepared to finish Xiao Chen with one move. A trash at the 9th grade of spirit refinement, if he could not finish him with one move, then he would lose all of his face. Xiao Chen stood casually in the corner, staying on his guard, and circulated the purple thunder divine incantation in his body. After the battle with the first elder of the Zhang clan, Xiao Chen did not feel fear towards the Xiao Jian who was a peak martial disciple. He was not worried about this battle, and there was no way that Xiao Jian's medial grade yellow ranked martial technique could stand up against his superior grade yellow ranked martial technique, even if he had only 6 days of practice under his belt. Xiao Jian did not hold back and raised his peak martial disciple strength to its max. He was simply waiting for Xiao Chen to let his guard down before making a move, radiating out his killing intent to pressure Xiao Chen. After cultivating the purple thunder divine incantation, Xiao Chen was very sensitive to the flow of qi. However, to Xiao Chen, Xiao Jian's killing intent seemed incredibly weak, not affecting him at all. He just gave Xiao Jian a mild smile and looked at him fearlessly. When the azure dragon that swam in Xiao Chen's dantian felt this minuscule killing intent, it felt as if its dignity was sullied. It let loose a loud roar within Xiao Chen's body, causing Xiao Chen's aura to suddenly rise explosively. Boom. In an instant, Xiao Jian's killing intent was forcefully bounced back. The might of this ancient azure dragon holy beast martial spirit was not something an insignificant martial disciple could withstand. Xiao Jian felt incomparably shocked. Xiao Chen actually managed to send his aura back, so could it be that he had already achieved the martial master realm? That was impossible. Xiao Jian's complexion changed slightly. Xiao Chen was a 9th grade spirit refinement trash, how could he suddenly break through from peak martial disciple to martial master realm? He had to make his move soon. Xiao Jian knew that his mental state was already shaken. He had to make his move and could wait no longer. Receive my martial technique, Inferno Chop. Xiao Jian soared into the air with a jump and punched out. A fireball burned on his fist, releasing a strong heatwave into the surroundings. His killing intent caused Xiao Chen to freeze up. Xiao Jian smiled coldly. With his speed as a peak martial disciple, it would be impossible for Xiao Chen to escape. This Inferno Chop was a medial grade yellow ranked martial techniques that he had cultivated for several years, so he was certain he would definitely finish this with one hit. Xiao Chen's expression turned grave. Seeing Xiao Jian's speed, he knew that he definitely could not avoid it. Since he could not avoid it, then he would receive it head-on. With the purple thunder divine incantation frantically circulating inside him, Xiao Chen stomped ruthlessly on the ground and flew upwards. His purple thunder true fire poured out of his right hand with a roar, encasing his entire right fist. This was the results of Xiao Chen cultivating for 6 days. He did not believe that the true fire of an immortal cultivator would be unable to compete against this ordinary fire. Bang! Their fists met in midair, and Xiao Chen was forced back a few steps before he managed to stabilize himself. The blood and qi in his body were in turmoil, but he quickly circulated his essence to calm the fluctuations in his blood and qi. It seemed that his raw strength was still slightly inferior to Xiao Jian's strength, as he had a peak martial disciple cultivation. Xiao Jian only had to take a few light steps back to stabilize himself, incessantly sneering at Xiao Chen in his heart. Earlier, when purple flames suddenly appeared on Xiao Chen's right fist, it had scared him quite a bit. However, after that exchange, he realized that looks could be deceiving, as the strength of that flame was only at the martial disciple realm. It seemed that this fellow finally condensed his martial spirit, and this strange flame could possibly be his martial spirit. However, when Xiao Jian thought about it, he realized he could make good use of this opportunity today to thoroughly destroy Xiao Chen's martial spirit. He could make Xiao Chen never be able to recover again. However, something strange had happened. That purple flame which had entwined with Xiao Jian's inferno chop had not actually extinguished. Xiao Jian pretended it was nothing and just flung his hand around trying to put out the flames. However, these purple flames were like they had been doused with oil. They continued to burn stronger, continually consuming the essence on Xiao Jian's palm. He was very shocked and hurriedly circulated essence to his right palm. Unexpectedly, the purple flames were incomparably stubborn. Even after it was wrapped with a huge amount of essence, it still continued to unsparingly consume the essence that Xiao Jian sent to it. What was going on? Xiao Jian immediately felt frantic in his heart. He began to randomly swing his hands around. However, regardless of how he swung his hands, this flame was like a leech sticking to his body, unwilling to be flung off. The essence in his body still continued to stream towards his palm. After a period of time, the purple flame seemed to have finally consumed all of its energy and began to slowly extinguish itself. Xiao Jian finally managed to catch his breath with difficulty when suddenly, there was a crackling sound in the air. When he raised his head, there was a bright and blinding thunderbolt firing towards him. Superior grade yellow ranked martial technique, Divine Thunder Break. Bang! Xiao Jian shrieked out miserably and his whole body flew off the arena. He was charred black and continuously convulsed, arcs of electricity jumping around his body. Silence. The surroundings became incomparably silent. The martial hall, which was bustling with noise and excitement earlier, was now absolutely silent. Everyone's mouths were agape in shock. While they stood there watching all these events unfold, they felt incomparably stupefied. There were even some who stood very far at the back, who did not know what had happened, all thinking how did Xiao Jian suddenly fly off the arena. The two of them had only exchanged a blow and the duel had just started. In the eyes of the audience, this duel would definitely not take too long. The martial realms of these two were just too far apart. Xiao Chen should be completely helpless and be rendered useless in a single blow. But now, the situation had inverted from their expectations. The audience could not believe it when they saw that the strongest person in the younger generation, Xiao Jian, was actually defeated in one move by the trash still in 9th grade spirit refinement. This completely exceeded their expectations. Xiao Chen looked at the distant Xiao Yulan and gently smiled at her. He proceeded to leap off the arena and headed towards the gates without even looking at Xiao Jian on the floor. He had stayed his hands earlier and had split his attention to the purple thunder true fire. If he struck out with the divine thunder break at its maximum strength, he could have shattered Xiao Jian's martial spirit. The crowd automatically parted a path and looked at Xiao Chen with a complicated expression. Those Xiao clan disciples who used to be on good terms with Xiao Jian did not even dare to look Xiao Chen in the eye. Xiao clan courtyard. The duel was already half a month ago, and in this half a month, Xiao Chen could feel the attitudes of the Xiao clan members towards him had been changing. Reverence and respect replaced the looks of disdain from the past. This was how the Tianwu continent was like. It was a world where the strong ruled, and only with strength could one obtain the respect of others. Xiao Chen ignored these changed attitudes. Aside from accompanying Xiao Yulan into Mohe City for a few times in the past half a month, he had spent the rest of his time cultivating. The events in Seven Horn Mountain had left a shadow in his heart. There was probably some conspiracy between that mysterious man in blue and the Zhang clan, and it was probably related to the promise of 10 years that would happen a few months later. Although he was not a person of this world, if the Xiao clan lost Seven Horn Mountain, they would definitely lose their standing in Mohe City. With his current strength, if he lost the protection of the Xiao clan, not to mention a martial saint, even a martial grand master could easily kill him. Xiao Chen felt a deep sense of crisis. He could only continue to become stronger, which was how he could hold his fate in his own hands in the future. The cultivation of the Purple Thunder True Fire had already reached the second layer, and it no longer required the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation to be circulated. With just his will, he could condense the flames. With his great control, the Purple Thunder True Fire could now leave his hands and float in the air. Now that he achieved this realm, he had achieved the basic requirements of refining medicinal pills. Thus, Xiao Chen decided to go to Mohe City to buy a suitable medicine cauldron to try and refine medicinal pills. Mohe City was one of the 8 main cities of the Qizi County. Within the Great Qin Nation, it could only be considered an ordinary, small city. Aside from the original owner of this body, Xiao Chen himself had come here more than once already, so he was familiar with the roads and arrived shortly. Xiao Chen confidently walked to the largest smithy, called Regretful Iron. Its main branch was located at the continent's capital, and the Dong clan backing it was said to be the Great Qin Nation's top merchant association. The interior decorations were quite unique, and its shelves were filled with weapons and armor of all colors. There were many customers in there, indicating that the business of this smithy was quite good. Xiao Chen approached the shelf reserved specially for medicine cauldrons. After checking it out for a long period of time, he was interested in none of them, as these were only made out of ordinary metals. Xiao Chen shook his head and was about to leave when suddenly a bold heroic voice called out from behind him, "Young Master Xiao, are you here to buy medicine cauldrons?" Xiao Chen turned to take a look and saw an old man. This old man still seemed to be very alert and energetic. Xiao Chen tried, but he could not recall the name of this person, thus he could not help but ask out of suspicions, "You are?" That old man laughed. "Haha, perhaps young Master Xiao does not recognize this old man. I am the owner of this shop, my humble surname is Ma." Xiao Chen smiled gently, "So it is Boss Ma. I am indeed thinking of purchasing a quality medicine cauldron, but the goods in your shop just seem to be average." Boss Ma laughed loudly. "Since young Master Xiao does not fancy any of these cauldrons, how about you follow me to the back to take a look?" "Go to the back and take a look." Xiao Chen immediately turned vigilant. In his memories, he did not recall having any contact with this Boss Ma. Why would Boss Ma suddenly invite him inside for no reason? What intentions did he have? Although he needed a good medicine cauldron, he could not help but feel suspicious. "In that case, Boss Ma, please lead the way." Xiao Chen smiled gently. His desire for a good medicine cauldron outweighed the suspicions that he had. However, he still remained on guard, and at the first sign of any trouble, he would immediately leave. Boss Ma led Xiao Chen past the crowds and headed upstairs. After arriving upstairs, he could see that the goods displayed on the second floor were of a much higher quality than downstairs. Xiao Chen even spotted some spirit weapons. The prices here were high, thus there were many who were just browsing and only a few that were buying. Boss Ma just gently smiled and continued to lead the way. They continued until they reached the 4th floor. From the 2nd floor onwards, there were fewer and fewer people. When they arrived on the 4th floor, there were virtually no people. The decorations on the 4th floor were extremely luxurious. Despite this, the fact that there were no display shelves made Xiao Chen feel suspicious. Only a youth dressed in embroidered clothes stood at the window with his back facing away from the window, looking down at the streets below. When that youth heard their footsteps, he turned and smiled. "It's been tough, Boss Ma. Have a rest first, I will entertain this guest." His voice was melodious, natural, graceful, and delicate, like the sound of a wind chime. Boss Ma gently nodded his head and bowed before he withdrew. That youth quickly walked over and said to Xiao Chen, "It was presumptuous of me to do this, forgive me if I have offended you." After Xiao Chen saw the appearance of this person more clearly, he smiled gently in his heart. This youth wearing embroidered clothes was actually a girl cross-dressing. Her facial features were picturesque, and she had white teeth and twinkling eyes, though the male clothing she wore gave her a heroic air. Xiao Chen smiled. "Since when did Mohe City have a beauty like you? I actually did not realize that." The girl smiled. She did not mind Xiao Chen's teasing. "Young Master Xiao must be joking. I have heard of your distinguished reputation, and upon seeing you for myself, I must say that it seems true." Xiao Chen's suspicions deepened in his heart. She knew of his reputation, but she was still so courteous to him. What was the origin of this girl? Without changing his expression, he kept smiling gently and said, "I still have not asked you for your name yet." Feng Feishui. Feng Feishui. Xiao Chen muttered that name mentally a few times. He was sure that this girl was not from Mohe City. Thinking of this possibility, he still did not change his expression, "So it is Miss Feng. Well, I shall cut to the chase, show me the medicine cauldron." Feng Feishui's red lips parted and laughed lightly, looking extremely alluring. "Young Master Xiao is really impatient, and here I was prepared to chat with you for quite a while." When she finished saying that, she waved her hands and 4 strangely shaped medicine cauldrons appeared out of nowhere on the wooden table nearby. Xiao Chen was shocked, because she was actually using a spatial ring. Looks like this girl had a great background, as even a regular martial saint might not get the chance to use a spatial ring. Soon, his surprise turned into amazement and his gaze was quickly attracted to the 4 medicine cauldrons on the wooden table. These 4 medicine cauldrons all had different shapes and were obviously saturated with spiritual energy. Xiao Chen was sure that these medicine cauldrons were alloyed with moonstone, and they were not just alloyed with a little bit of moonstone powder, or else its color and spiritual energy would not be so thick. Amongst them, there was an azure dragon medicine cauldron that attracted his attention. This cauldron stood on 3 legs and there were 2 vivid and lifelike azure dragons entrenched together on its body. One of the dragon heads was for inputting the fire and the other was for outputting the pills. The handicraft of the person who made this cauldron was very good and the carving of the azure dragon was extremely expressive. It looked like it was about to come to life. Xiao Chen held it in his hands and played around with it for a little, eventually asking, "Can I give this medicine cauldron a test run?" Feng Feishui was a little shocked in her heart. Could he be an alchemist? Was this medicine cauldron for his own use? It looked like her earlier assumption might be wrong. Without changing her expression, "No problem, please go ahead." Xiao Chen placed the medicine cauldron on the table and used his consciousness to condense a ball of purple flames with his right hand. He slowly pushed the flame down the cauldron and carefully controlled the purple flames to enter the medicine cauldron. When it completely entered the cauldron, he released his control and let the purple flames burn ferociously. Xiao Chen carefully observed the medicine cauldron. Under the heat of the purple flames, the azure-colored medicine cauldron did not experience any changes. Its spiritual energy was still incomparable like before. After letting the purple flames burn for a while, Xiao Chen could feel his essence diminishing. He hurriedly retrieved the purple flames and calmed the fluctuations of spiritual energy in his body. Xiao Chen picked up the azure dragon cauldron and took a closer look. The outside of the medicine cauldron was not hot. After he opened the cauldron lid, a stream of hot air came out. Xiao Chen seemed to have seen a formless azure dragon rising up into the air. He sniffed the inside of the cauldron light. The air in there was dry and pleasant, there were no strange odors. Xiao Chen felt incomparably amazed in his heart. This was exactly what he needed. If he only needed an ordinary medicine cauldron, then there were plenty in the Xiao clan. It was a pity that under the refinement of the purple thunder true fire, those ordinary medicine cauldron would start to have cracks after a short while. Those cauldrons were just not suitable for refining medicines. He had not held much hope when he came to this shop, thus he had only brought a piece of moonstone with him. If he could not find a suitable one, he would use this piece of moonstone to refine one. He did not expect to be able to find a cauldron to his liking in regretful iron. Xiao Chen smiled. "Miss Feng, I wonder how much you want for this medicine cauldron." Feng Feishui picked up the Azure Dragon medicine cauldron and played with it in her hands. She did not give Xiao Chen a direct answer. Alchemists are one of the most respected professions in the Tianwu continent. Undeniably, a top-quality medicine cauldron is not the most important thing to an alchemist. Medicine cauldrons can be classified into 5 grades. Does young Master Xiao knows about this? There were definitely differences in the quality of medicine cauldron, but Xiao Chen had not heard about the classification of 5 grades before. He shook his head and said, "Please elaborate." A grade 1 medicine cauldron is made out of ordinary metals and can only withstand ordinary flames of the mundane world. The medicinal pills refined through 1 as a result will not exceed grade 2, and that's excluding peak quality pills. A grade 2 medicine cauldron has some small amounts of moonstones mixed in, just like yellow-ranked spirit weapons, and can withstand the spiritual flames of the world. It is insignificant and does not have any soul, so it is difficult for medicinal pills refined from such a cauldron to be of peak quality, and a grade 3 medicinal cauldron can barely be considered a medicine cauldron of superior quality, notwithstanding it being alloyed with a large amount of moonstone, as well as other rare materials. In addition, it is made by a skilled blacksmith. This kind of medicine cauldron can have a soul, and the medicinal pills refined by it can achieve their peak effects. Its whole body is perfectly smooth and round, making any leakage of medicinal fragrance virtually impossible. Feng Feishui spoke as though it was routine as she actively replied. Xiao Chen listened with interest. What about grade 4 and grade 5? Feng Feishui stopped for a while before continuing. Once a medicine cauldron crosses over the boundary of the 3rd grade, it will become what is better known as a heavenly cauldron. Heavenly cauldrons are very rare, and not only do they require large amounts of moonstones and a pile of materials, they also require a divine-level blacksmith to imbue it with a soul during casting. Due to the scarcity of moonstones, there have not been any new heavenly cauldrons for hundreds of years. As for the divine cauldron that is above the heavenly cauldron, I had only read about it in books and have not seen it before. Xiao Chen pondered on everything Feng Feishui had said. Then what grade is this Azure Dragon medicine cauldron? This is a work at the peak of grade 3. If you can find a divine blacksmith to infuse it with a soul, then it can immediately become a heavenly cauldron. Feng Feishui said unhurriedly, looking at Xiao Chen without blinking. This Azure Dragon medicine cauldron was actually a top grade 3 medicine cauldron. It seems that he had underestimated the price of this medicine cauldron earlier. He would not be able to afford the price of this Azure Dragon medicine cauldron even if he scrounged together all the silver taels to his name. However, Xiao Chen was unresigned and pushed for the envelope. I wonder what it would take for Miss Feng to be willing to part with this Azure Dragon medicine cauldron. Feng Feishui took the Azure Dragon medicine cauldron and tossed it around, a trace of wit flitting across her face as she smiled. If young Master Xiao is truly interested, then how about I give it to you as a gift? As a gift? Xiao Chen was surprised, but he quickly reacted mentally. How could there be such a good thing in this world? Xiao Chen smiled embarrassedly. Miss Feng, please stop teasing me, just state your price. I may not have much money on hand, but I believe that I should still be able to afford this medicine cauldron. Feng Feishui smiled. Are you really able to afford it? A superior grade 1 medicine cauldron would require a few thousand taels of silver. A superior grade 2 medicine cauldron requires tens of thousands of silver taels. And as for this top grade 3 medicine cauldron, it would be impossible to purchase this without hundreds of thousands of silver taels. So expensive. Xiao Chen frowned. Hundreds of thousands of silver taels was nothing to the Xiao clan, but it was not a small sum either. Would the Xiao clan spend such an amount on him? It was hard to say. Actually, if she truly wanted to sell this top grade 3 medicine cauldron, she could even sell it for 1,000,000 silver taels at an auction. Moonstones were far too rare in the continent, and heavenly cauldrons were already rarely seen in the past century. This top grade 3 medicine cauldron could be possibly the best medicine cauldron most alchemists would be able to use in their entire life. People with the alchemist occupation were also a seldom sight lately. It could be said that every alchemist was the result of a clan's heavy investment. They had no mind to be frugal with their money, considering it perfectly normal to spend a fortune in order to purchase a quality cauldron. Even though it was such, when Xiao Chen heard Feng Feishui's words, he felt uncomfortable. Xiao Chen smiled coldly. Miss Feng, it seems you've already decided for yourself that I, Xiao Chen, of all people, cannot afford such a luxurious item, isn't it? Feng Feishui's smile froze. Realizing that the tone of her words was inappropriate, she hurriedly added, "Young Master Xiao, you misunderstand me. You can have this medicine cauldron right away. If young Master Xiao does not have enough silver, you can just write a promissory note." Xiao Chen took out a piece of moonstone the size of his palm. "Many thanks for Miss Feng's intentions, but there is no need for a promissory note. I wonder if this piece of moonstone is worth the price." Feng Feishui was taken by surprise. She picked up the palm-sized moonstone and inspected it carefully before smiling bitterly. "Young Master Xiao, I truly have good intentions, are you not willing to accept this kindness of mine?" Xiao Chen held the Azure Dragon medicine cauldron in his hands and promptly cupped them in a polite gesture signifying he was taking his leave. "Many thanks for Miss Feng's medicine cauldron, goodbye." After he said that, he turned to walk away without looking back. Xiao Chen felt uneasy staying in that room. The emergence of this medicine cauldron was a little strange, so it was best that he left early. Feng Feishui stared pensively at the palm-sized moonstone in her hand. Such a large piece of moonstone would allow one to forge an inferior-grade profound ranked spirit weapon and still have materials in reserve. This naturally covered the cost of her medicine cauldron by a long shot. Looking at Xiao Chen's disappearing figure, Feng Feishui smiled gently. "Xiao Chen, looks like the Azure Dragon martial spirit is not your only secret." Unbeknownst as to when, but a man shrouded in darkness appeared behind Feng Feishui all of a sudden. The appearance of this man was quite abrupt, as though he had been there all along. "Big Miss, actually, more than 1,000 years has passed since that promise was made. There is no need to honor it anymore." A hoarse voice came from that man in the shadows. Feng Feishui's expression turned cold as she warned him, "You don't have to bother about my matters. I am just reminding Big Miss, the clan takes priority." That hoarse voice spoke once again, as though he did not hear Feng Feishui's warning. Feng Feishui smiled coldly. "Shu, I will say it once again, don't interfere in my matters. If I find out that anything has happened to Xiao Chen, regardless of whosoever's fault it is, I will blame it on you." Within the shadows, Shu laughed out coldly and changed the topic. "We have found out the facial appearance of the person you are looking for. We should have his exact address in another 7 days." Feng Feishui stared blankly for a while. "I understand what you mean. I have not forgotten the purpose in coming here. Pay special attention to this, I don't want anything going wrong." After Xiao Chen left the doors of regretful iron, he took a deep breath of the fresh air in the large street. The feeling of a pair of eyes staring at him was present the entire time he was on the 4th floor, which made him feel exceedingly uncomfortable as if danger was looming, rendering his senses uneasy. Regardless of the result, he had accomplished his motive for coming out today. He held the Azure Dragon medicine cauldron in his bag as he smiled in satisfaction and made preparations to head on over to the herbs shop and buy some herbs before heading home. Mohe City was quite bustling in the day. There was high human traffic and the shouts of people advertising their products, and it was far from being cold and cheerless. Xiao Chen was not in a hurry, slowly walking on the big street and appreciating the strange scenery he would never have had the chance to see back home on Earth. Right at this very moment, however, the sound of galloping horses emerged in the distance. Xiao Chen relied on his great eyesight to gain a clear view of the commotion ahead. There were 3 people riding their fine steeds on the street in a brisk gallop, and everyone on the street parted a path for them. There were some who did not manage to get out of the way in time and could do nothing but dive to the ground in their moment of haste, dirt inadvertently entering their mouths. When they saw the people on the horses, they did not dare to say anything and could just consider themselves unlucky. When the people on the horses saw this, they laughed loudly, looking incredibly arrogant. They spurred the horses on, not reducing their speed. In the blink of an eye, those 3 horses almost arrived at the front of Xiao Chen. A little girl in front, standing in the middle of the street, was so frightened when she saw the galloping horses that she ended up crying. The horses galloped faster and faster, and despite their clear collision course with the little girl, the riders did not slow down at all. Xiao Chen was taken aback. This group of people was too outrageous. He dashed forward, grabbed the little girl in the very instant of her imminent peril, and evaded the group of marching horses. "Nay! The one leading the three men pulled on the reins, causing the horse to neigh as he reared it to a stop. When the two people behind saw this, they also followed suit in a hurry. The person in the lead was dressed in a brown flowery gown and was the first to turn his horse around and slowly trot over to Xiao Chen. I had wondered who this familiar-looking person was, so it was actually the second young master of the Xiao clan. Why are you imitating others and acting chivalrous today? The youth riding on the back of the horse towered over him and laughed loudly with arrogance. Indeed, young Master Xiao has been a rare sight in Misty Rain Pavilion. Young Master Xiao's character has indeed changed. One of the other men riding a horse quickly followed up. Xiao Chen gently placed down the little girl and looked coldly at the group of people on horseback. These three people were Zhang clan disciples, and the one leading them was Zhang Ziyang, the second son of the Zhang clan head. He had an equally horrible reputation in Mohe City as Xiao Chen, but it was not because he was trash as well. Instead, it was for bullying the commoners as well as his arrogant and despotic character. Due to the fact that the Zhang clan and the Xiao clan were at loggerheads, whenever the two of them met, there would definitely be some disagreements. However, Xiao Chen had always been on the losing end. What are you looking at? What kind of expression is that? Are you seeking death? One of the men behind Zhang Ziyang raised his horsewhip and suddenly lashed in Xiao Chen's direction. The whip cracked in the air, fast approaching Xiao Chen's face with whiplash. If it were the Xiao Chen of old, it would have definitely hit him and caused a laceration. Xiao Chen smiled coldly as he used his hand to grab the whip firmly with a fluid swipe of his arm, greatly astonishing the person on horseback. He wished to retract the whip, but he was not able to even move it an inch, as though it had been wedged tightly in a steel vice grip. There seemed to be a flash of lightning in Xiao Chen's eyes as arcs of electricity leapt around on his hands, issuing crackling sounds. With a whooshing sound, the electricity traveled along the horsewhip to the hands of that person. Very soon, it jumped around that person's body in wide arcs, sparing not even the horse he was mounted on from electrocution. The horse was shocked, resulted in it jumping about wildly, and the Zhang clan disciple himself was flung from the horse and landed with a loud thud. Zhang Ziyang quickly leapt off his horse and helped the person on the ground up. That person's face was pale and was still trembling. With the electricity having invaded the meridians of his body, he would not be recovering anytime soon. Xiao Chen, you dare hurt my cousin? Are you tired of living? Zhang Ziyang shouted out in a powerful voice. Xiao Chen smiled indifferently. Zhang Ziyang, according to your logic, I cannot retaliate and can only allow you to hit me. Was this reasoning taught to you by your mother or your father? Being just the insignificant second son of the Zhang clan, do you really think that there is no one in Mohe City that can deal with you? Zhang Ziyang was stunned. This Xiao Chen's character had really changed. In the past, when they met, it would be routine for him to beat him up. Due to the fact that this was a shameful matter, he wouldn't possibly dare tell his clan, so he, Zhang Ziyang, was not worried at all. Why was Xiao Chen behaving so assertively today? However, no matter how assertive he was still trash. Zhang Ziyang would be able to deal with garbage of the 9th grade spirit refinement realm as a medial grade martial disciple quite easily. Thinking of this point, Zhang Ziyang did not bother about Xiao Chen's taunt and smiled coldly. Young Master Xiao, are you in that much of a hurry to die? Xiao Chen laughed loudly. Are you an idiot? After speaking so much, you are still only able to say the same thing over and over again. What does my death have to do with you? If you have the abilities, then come and hit me. I will stand still over here, come if you dare. You really think that I would not dare to hit you? Upon hearing such mockery, Zhang Ziyang could no longer hold back. He shouted angrily as the essence in his body circulated rapidly inside him. He then hurled a fist towards Xiao Chen with a roar, using about 80% of his full power. Xiao Chen had crossed his bottom line by mocking him in public, which was intolerable in his books. Xiao Chen smiled coldly, so that was all it took to infuriate him. He followed the incoming fist, replete with killing intent and more, with his gaze, the purple thunder divine incantation circulating rapidly in his body. The azure dragon in his dantian roared lightly as his essence surged, raring to come out. Who? Xiao Chen struck out, unleashing a plain fist just like Zhang Ziyang's. Xiao Chen had used his full power in this fist, and a thunderous sound of wind billowed off his fist as purple crackling electrical arcs gathered on it. Bang! Their two fists collided head-on, setting off an explosive sound that filled the skies. Zhang Ziyang could only feel a turbulent force heading in his direction, and it was by far not something he could withstand easily. His body was blasted back a few steps before he was able to stabilize himself. His face had turned incredibly pale and blood trickled out from the corner of his mouth. Xiao Chen cultivated the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation in addition to the Azure Dragon Martial Spirit, so the essence in his body was very deep and profound. The full force of his cultivation as a martial disciple was equivalent to a peak martial disciple. Zhang Ziyang had thought that Xiao Chen was still in the 9th grade spirit refinement realm, and thus only used 80% of his full power. When going against Xiao Chen, who was using his full force, how could he have overcome that? With just that insignificant amount of strength, you dare to throw your weight around in Mohe City? Xiao Chen snorted. He ferociously stomped on the ground with his right foot, imprinting his foot in small cracks on the marble floor of the street. This stomp caused Xiao Chen to fly forward, reaching Zhang Ziyang's front instantaneously. He struck his palm out towards Zhang Ziyang's chest. This happened incredibly fast, and even the people beside Zhang Ziyang were unable to react to it. Looking at this palm imbued with murderous intent, he felt jittery and shut his eyes in despair. Could it be that I, Zhang Ziyang, will die here today? Stop! An explosive shout came from afar. The voice was very loud and shook the eardrums of everyone present. Xiao Chen ignored this voice and continued to send out his powerful palm strike towards Zhang Ziyang. The opportunity to cripple Zhang Ziyang was not something that came by every day, after all. All or nothing. Boom. A figure rapidly approached, streaking across the sky like a laser beam, leaving behind trails of afterimages. It nimbly went behind Zhang Ziyang and ferociously pulled him backward, saving him. The figure then struck out quickly, clashing with Xiao Chen's palm. Only 2 breaths of time had passed since this person had shouted. His speed and strength were evident. A surging strength emanated from that person's palm, forcing Xiao Chen to quickly retreated 3 steps before he managed to stabilize himself. The blood in his body was in turmoil. Xiao Chen hurriedly circulated the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation to protect his Dantian and calm the fluctuating blood and essence in his body. In front of Xiao Chen was the person who had struck out. The man was dressed in white. He was very handsome and had a faint smile on his indifferent face. His eyes had a trace of pride, making his expression seem colder. Big brother, why are you here? Zhang Ziyang, who was saved, shouted out in joy. After realizing who had rescued him, he knew that he could possibly turn this situation around to his advantage. That person in white smiled gently. I waited for a while but you guys hadn't arrived yet, so I came to look for you. What timing, I got to see a good show. This person in white was Zhang He. He was the eldest son of the Zhang clan and his innate talent was very good. When he was 10 years old, he was accepted into the continent's capital's White Cliff School. He had rarely come back in the past few years. Based on his earlier palm strike, one could tell that his cultivation had already reached the martial master realm for many years already. Looks like there was no longer any opportunity to cripple Zhang Ziyang's cultivation. Since there were no longer any opportunities, then there was no need for him to dilly-dally here, thought Xiao Chen. Thus, he turned away and started to leave. Suddenly, there was the sound of a sonic boom. Xiao Chen did not even bother to look. He just turned his body and launched a divine thunder break backwards. A bright lightning bolt streaked through the air, heading to the area in between Zhang He's eyebrows. Zhang He pulled back and stood still, his entire body like a treasured sword. A majestic sword intent suddenly fired out from his body, leaving countless sword chi in the air. After a short period of time, that bright lightning bolt dissipated. This distinguished friend, you bullied my second brother earlier and even seemed to have enjoyed doing so. How can you just leave like that? Why don't you stay and give us some pointers? Zhang He stood straight with his hands behind his back, looking very casual. Although Xiao Chen did not turn his head back to look, he knew very clearly what had happened behind him. His divine thunder break was dissipated by Zhang He. This person was indeed very strong, but he was just so. Xiao Chen was not afraid of him. A mere martial master, even if he could not defeat him, it would be easy for him to escape. He turned around and smiled in a relaxed manner. I have heard that the eldest son of the Zhang clan's martial spirit is the Holy Sword, Clear Sky Sword. It has a heaven and ground shaking might and its sword intent can communicate with spirits. After seeing it, I must say that it lives up to its reputation. I, as an inferior grade martial disciple, concedes his defeat. Zhang He could tell that Xiao Chen's words were subtly mocking him for bullying the weak with his strength. He did not mind it at all and continued to smile. Brother Xiao is too humble. I heard that the number one person in your Xiao clan, Xiao Jian, was defeated by you in one move. That Xiao Jian was a proper peak martial disciple. He was even more unyielding than myself. Xiao Chen was surprised. This person had been all the way in the continent's capital and yet he was so familiar with the news of the Xiao clan. This person could not be underestimated. Without changing his expression, Xiao Chen calmly replied, "It is just a rumor. Does young Master Zhang believe them too?" The two of them glared at each other, observing each other closely. Zhang He's gaze was as sharp as a sword, the clear sky sword letting out a drone. Additionally, a terrifying sword intent was emitted from his body. The sword intent became more and more intense before shooting out from his eyes. His formless sword intent seemed solid as it shot towards Xiao Chen ferociously with a sonic boom. The aura of a martial master combined with this flood of sword intent firmly locked Xiao Chen in place. Xiao Chen frowned tightly, the azure dragon in his body casually swam around in his body. The might of the ancient holy beast combined with Xiao Chen's aura began to clash with this formless sword intent. Under the might of this ancient holy beast, the powerful sword intent was stopped in its tracks about 2 meters away from Xiao Chen. It was unable to progress forward. At this moment, the two of them were in a deadlock. Zhang He's medial martial master aura was not able to overpower Xiao Chen's seemingly insignificant cultivation of inferior martial disciple. "Big brother, why are you talking so much nonsense with him? He tried to kill me earlier." Zhang Ziyang stood at the side with a sullen face. When he heard these words, Zhang He despised his own younger brother in his heart. It may have seemed like he had effortlessly dissipated Xiao Chen's divine thunder break earlier, but he had actually spent a lot of effort to do so and had used a lot of essence. Now, he was delaying Xiao Chen as he slowly recovered his essence. He was waiting for Xiao Chen to show an opening so that he could make a move. If the person in front of him was so easy to deal with, he would have made a move long ago. The aura that he had been gathering was interrupted by Zhang Ziyang's words. Zhang He had no choice but to retrieve his sword intent and make the first move. Xiao Chen did not have any fear in his heart. Instead, he was full of a vigorous battle intent. He had wanted to test his strength out a long time ago but he could not find a suitable opponent. Xiao Yulan could have been a good opponent but the poison of the poinsettia was too strong. If he battled with her, his life would be in danger if he was careless for even a moment. The strength of the other Xiao clan disciples were too weak and it was too problematic to seek the help of those elders. The Zhang He in front of him was the best opponent. He was in the martial master realm and had a holy sword martial spirit. Xiao Chen wanted to see what kind of results he could obtain in this battle if he used his full power. While Xiao Chen was thinking, Zhang He had already taken the advantage and dashed over to attack first. The wind from his palm was like swords as it slashed towards Xiao Chen's chest. Xiao Chen took a small step back and circulated his purple thunder divine incantation to its peak. There were arcs of electricity leaping around his body before they finally headed to his right palm. At that moment, their palms clashed together. Bang! A surging energy poured out and a stream of chi rippled all around. The two of them did not stop and continued to strike out at each other. There were sounds of loud explosions as the pair scuttled around the street. Dirt was flying everywhere, the air was turbulent, and the crowd that was watching earlier had now retreated to a distance away. Zhang He's complexion had not changed, it was still red and glossy and he still had that faint smile on his face. On the other hand, Xiao Chen's hair was already messy, his face pale, and blood trickled out from the corner of his lips. He looked like he was in an extremely difficult situation but there was still traces of a faint smile on his face. He wiped the corner of his lips and tidied his hair a little. He looked at Zhang He in a relaxed and slightly provocative manner. Zhang He looked at Xiao Chen's provocative actions and felt his blood boiling. He almost vomited out a mouthful of fresh blood. However, Zhang He calmed down almost immediately. After all, he was not like Zhang Ziyang, he would not make those elementary mistakes. He smiled gently. You are strong, looks like I underestimated you earlier. But what a pity, you ran into me. I will cripple your cultivation today. Let's see how cocky will you be then. After he said that, Zhang He waved his hands and took out a longsword. This longsword was actually a spirit weapon. It was about 2.33 meters long and it had a luster similar to limpid autumn water. Zhang He's aura seemed to have changed after holding the sword. His aura turned sharp, radiating all around. A pressuring sword intent emerged. It was as incandescent as the sun. His entire being seemed like an unsheathed treasured sword. Pooh. 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 Zhang He took 2 steps forward ferociously and 3 streams of sword chi shot out and attacked Xiao Chen from different angles. Xiao Chen did not have a weapon in his hands, thus he could not block them easily and was forced to retreat backward. Who knew? That sword chi seemed to be able to track him, there was no way to avoid it. When Xiao Chen retreated, the sword chi followed him closely, stabbing towards his throat. He was unable to avoid it. Seeing the sword chi about to stab his throat, there was a look of desperation on Xiao Chen's face. At this moment of danger, Xiao Chen's thoughts gained a sudden clarity and he finally managed to evade the sword at the most crucial moment. Despite this, there was still a small gash left on his neck, with a trickle of blood flowing out. How fortunate, Xiao Chen thought to himself. Seeing his attack being evaded, Zhang He had an astonished look on his face. He then immediately pursued Xiao Chen relentlessly, each sword strike faster than the one before. Xiao Chen was unable to find the time to even catch his breath. Xiao Chen's brain worked very hard, as he knew that it was time for him to escape. Against Zhang He, who had a spirit weapon and wielded the powers of his martial spirit, he knew that he had no chance of winning. However, this battle had allowed him to learn of his limits. In a battle against a martial master, he would be at a big disadvantage. Xiao Chen knew that he had to work harder from now on. After evading another sword strike, Xiao Chen stomped the ground ferociously with his right foot and streams of essence flowed to his leg. Using the force created by the impact, Xiao Chen retreated several meters. While he was in the air, he even shot out 2 clumps of purple thunder true fire. Young Master Zhang, I shall take my leave now, we will meet again in future. Xiao Chen laughed loudly as he turned around and dashed away frantically. Trying to run. It's too late, Zhang He laughed coldly in his heart. He was about to give chase when the 2 clumps of purple thunder true fire reached his body. Zhang He casually slashed the fire with his sword, intending to scatter the purple flames. Who would have guessed that when the purple flames touched the sword would catch on fire? In an instant, the entire spirit weapon was enveloped by the purple flames. Zhang He was startled and hurriedly tossed his sword away. Those 2 clumps of purple flames looked ordinary, but they were actually the result of Xiao Chen's quick thinking. He had almost compressed all the purple flames that his body could condense. This was not something that Zhang He could casually scatter with his sword. Zhang He looked somewhat fearfully at the burning sword on the ground. If this strange flame had spread to his body, it would have been very scary. When Zhang He thought of that, he shivered. Big brother, why did you let him go? Chase after him quickly. Zhang Ziyang said cluelessly. When he heard this, Zhang He felt very exasperated. He could no longer suppress the blood in his throat and vomited it out. When Zhang Ziyang saw this, he was so frightened that he went pale. Xiao Chen returned to the Xiao clan in a somewhat sorry state. He had originally planned to purchase some herbs, but he had not managed to do so. Xiao Chen laid on his bed and casually tossed the Azure Dragon medicine cauldron onto the table. It seemed that he had to give up his thoughts of refining medicines for today. Lying on his bed, Xiao Chen kept thinking about every aspect of the battle with Zhang He today. If it was a battle with their bare hands, then he might not necessarily be at a disadvantage. However, Zhang He had a spirit weapon and had even manifested the powers of his martial spirit, leaving him helpless. Zhang He's martial spirit was a clear sky sword. In this world, the martial spirit of many people were holy items that had previously existed. The clear sky sword was an example of this. It was a sacred object that appeared 10,000 years ago and had already disappeared in the passing of time. His own Azure Dragon martial spirit was an ancient holy beast. Martial spirits that used to exist had a name that was common to the continent: spiritual martial spirit. Spiritual martial spirits were able to communicate with spirits, and its might was unfathomable. For example, a medial-grade martial master like Zhang He could rely on the might of the clear sky sword to give off a sword chi that only martial saints and above could emit, causing Xiao Chen to be forced into a sorry state. This was the power of a spiritual martial spirit. Then what was the special ability of his Azure Dragon martial spirit? Xiao Chen was somewhat puzzled as he thought about this. After coming to this world, he had only been in a few battles and he had not actually used the Azure Dragon martial spirit yet. More specifically, he had not used the Azure Dragon martial spirit on his own accord and had completely relied on his Purple Thunder divine incantation to battle. Logically, his Azure Dragon martial spirit should not be inferior to Zhang He's clear sky sword. How could he utilize the power of the Azure Dragon martial spirit? Spirit weapon. After pondering for a long time, Xiao Chen finally thought of spirit weapons. He wanted to possess a spirit weapon. This was the only way to exhibit the power of the Azure Dragon martial spirit. Or else, it would be a waste of this ancient holy beast martial spirit. Furthermore, there was still a copious amount of moonstones from the Thunder Emperor's cave that he had not used. The amount should be more than sufficient to forge a high-ranked spirit weapon. When he thought of it, he instantly made up his mind. Xiao Chen got up and changed into a new set of clothing. He also washed away the filth and blood on his face. After leaving his small courtyard, he headed to the Xiao clan's library. Since he was going to forge a spirit weapon, then he naturally had to find a martial technique for using spirit weapons. He had to look in Xiao clan's library because it would be impossible for him to find a martial technique in the Compendium of Cultivation. The Xiao clan's residence was very large and the library was located in the southeast area of the Xiao clan's residence. It was a distance from the courtyard that Xiao Chen lived in. Xiao Chen lazily walked on the path of the Xiao clan's residence, going past a few gardens and courtyards before arriving at the library. The Xiao clan's library had 3 floors and there were many cultivation methods and martial techniques. The first floor contained ordinary yellow-ranked martial techniques and cultivation methods. The second floor contained profound ranked martial techniques and cultivation methods. As for the third floor, it was very mysterious. Ordinary Xiao clan disciples did not know what was in there. The techniques kept in the Xiao clan library were the result of the accumulations of many years. Its value was not to be underestimated. There were elite guards patrolling the surroundings. A cultivator in the spirit refinement realm did not have the qualifications to enter the library. Only after reaching the martial disciple realm may one enter the first floor, and only after entering the martial master realm may one enter the second floor. In the past, Xiao Chen was only in the 9th grade of spirit refinement. Naturally, he could not enter. Now, after defeating Xiao Jian, no one would stop him even if he wanted to enter. The library had always been a bustling place, and at this moment, there were many Xiao clan disciples focused on looking at various martial techniques. When Xiao Chen entered, he attracted the gazes of all these people, causing them to start chatting with each other. Look, Xiao Chen is here. What is he here for? Isn't he only in the 9th grade of spirit refinement? How did he get the qualifications to enter? You pighead. If he can defeat Xiao Jian, then he must have already become a martial disciple. The guards would have stopped him from entering otherwise. Those guards are martial grand masters. This trash has now risen to prominence. You better keep your voices down. If he hears you, who knows what the consequences will be. Ellipsis. Their voices may have been soft, but Xiao Chen could still hear them. Xiao Chen found it funny and just ignored them, directly going to the bookshelves to look for martial techniques for weapons. This was his first time here, and the library was very big, so it took him quite some time before he managed to find the bookshelf for weapons-related martial techniques. Thunderbolt Swordplay. Medial grade yellow ranked martial technique. There are 13 moves to this swordplay, each stroke faster than the one before it. Use a speed as fast as a thunderbolt to kill the enemy. Mountain Splitting Hack. Inferior grade yellow ranked martial technique. When trained to the Great Perfection realm, it can split the mountains and separate the seas with one hack. Revolving Spear. Inferior grade yellow ranked martial technique. Focuses essence on the body of the spear, creating a revolving force. Able to achieve unimaginable results in battle. Xiao Chen kept reading book after book. The more he read, the less interested he was. The highest grade of martial techniques was only medial grade yellow ranked. There was not even a single superior grade yellow ranked martial technique. Furthermore, the descriptions were very exaggerated, they were only yellow ranked martial techniques. No matter how much they were trained in, it would be impossible to split the mountains and separate the seas or be as fast as a thunderbolt. Putting down a yellow-ranked martial technique book, he noticed a book as he lowered his head. The book was covered in dust and in the corner on the bottom shelf. There were some blurred words that he noticed, instantly attracting his gaze. Heaven ranked. Xiao Chen carefully looked around. After making sure that there was no one around, he quickly and carefully picked up the book. Xiao Chen felt incomparably joyful. Looks like he had days when he was lucky as well. There was actually a heaven-ranked martial technique on the first floor of the library. Furthermore, no one had discovered it. Heaven-ranked martial technique, Dragon Subduing Slash. Xiao Chen slowly flipped the book open and read it. This Dragon Subduing Slash was an introductory saber technique. There was a total of 13 moves, every move requiring more essence to exhibit than the one before. With Xiao Chen's current cultivation, he would not even be able to exhibit the first move, Return of the Azure Dragon. Xiao Chen carefully kept the Dragon Subduing Slash book, then he casually grabbed a medial grade yellow ranked martial technique before looking for the manager of the library, Xiao Ju. Xiao Ju was the second brother of his father. He had already become a martial grand master many years ago. However, he had then suffered an injury which caused his cultivation to drop to martial master, thus he was sent by the Xiao clan to manage the library. Looking at the Dragon Subduing Slash Xiao Chen handed over, Xiao Ju stared blankly for a while before saying, "Where did you find this martial technique? Were there some mysterious principles involved in this?" Xiao Chen suppressed the suspicions he had in his heart and told Xiao Ju the truth of where he had found the Dragon Subduing Slash. Xiao Ju laughed loudly after hearing it. "I have not seen this martial technique for quite a long time, so it was actually hidden there. Nephew Xiao Chen, you can't take this book out." "Why?" Xiao Ju replied with a slight tone of ridicule. "Did you think that you had gotten lucky and found a heaven-ranked martial technique that no one else discovered? That your strength would suddenly soar when you learned it, that you will be able to slaughter everyone and become unparalleled?" Xiao Chen, who had been seen through, said awkwardly, "What is wrong with this book? Since it is a heaven-ranked martial technique, why can't the Xiao clan disciples take it out?" Xiao Ju sighed in disappointment and frustration. "When I was young, I asked the same question as you. Since it is a heaven-ranked martial technique, why can't the Xiao clan disciples practice it?" Xiao Ju paused for a moment before sorrowfully continuing. "This martial technique can only be practiced by people who have the Azure Dragon martial spirit, anyone else would end up exploding and dying. However, the Azure Dragon martial spirit had not appeared in our Xiao clan for 1,000 years. Thus, this martial technique is like trash, taking it out will only cause harm to others." Azure Dragon again. Xiao Chen's heart beat very hard as he tried to maintain a poker face. "So, it is like this, then can I just take it back to reference it then return it? I promise not to practice it. This is no problem, this book is just a copy, you can take it back and don't bother returning it. Or else, someone else might get tempted by it and get into trouble. However, Xiao Chen, you must remember to never attempt to practice it. There were many in the elder generations of the Xiao clan who have tried and ended up exploding. There have been so many precedents of this." Xiao Chen nodded his head and smiled. "I assure you I won't. Second uncle, please do not worry. I shall take my leave first." "Second uncle, why isn't there even a profound ranked martial technique on the second floor?" Xiao Chen was about to leave when he heard a familiar voice. The person who spoke was Xiao Jian, who had just come from the second floor. Xiao Chen stopped in his tracks with some astonishment. Xiao Jian came from the second floor. W meant that he had broken through the bottleneck of peak martial disciple and was now a martial master. How surprising. Xiao Jian walked over, holding a few martial technique books. He had not expected to meet Xiao Chen here. Xiao Jian was surprised for a while before he smiled and said, I didn't expect to meet second brother here. Are you here to look for martial techniques too? Xiao Jian looked the same as he did before. He was dressed in a blue GI, looking very capable and experienced. The pride that used to show on his face had decreased somewhat, but Xiao Chen could still see a trace of hatred hidden in his eyes. Looks like the matter with Xiao Jian has not ended yet. As though Xiao Jian could hear his thoughts, Xiao Jian slowly walked over and said in a low voice, "The duel between you and I has just begun. I will repay the shame from that day with interest." The final few words were slowly enunciated through clenched teeth. Who humiliated who first? All these years, during the test of abilities, which one have you not humiliated me in? Have you ever thought of all the times that I have suffered because of that? Xiao Chen was not a person that was fickle-minded or unrighteous. If he was, he would not have held back while using Divine Thunder Break that day. But now, Xiao Jian had come to provoke him again, causing him to feel angry. It's just the martial master realm, did he need to be so smug? Since they were right in front of Xiao Ju, Xiao Chen was not in a position to flare up. Instead, he just gently smiled and said, "Wait till you have the ability before you come and say those big words." Without waiting for Xiao Jian's reply, he turned and left. You. Xiao Jian stared at Xiao Chen's back as he left, his gaze turning incredibly cold as he tightly clenched his fist. I, Xiao Jian, cannot lose to this trash again, regardless of the method. Second young master, I have finally found you. The first elder was looking for you everywhere. Xiao Chen was about to go back when he met that maid who had informed him back then to attend the test of abilities. He felt that it was strange. Why was the first elder looking for him? He stopped in his tracks and looked at the maid that was sent by the first elder. Do you know why the first elder is looking for me? The maid answered honestly. I am not sure about the details, but the first elder seemed to be very anxious. It should be something important. In the past, this maid would have just ignored Xiao Chen and just left after passing on the message. Today, not only did she answer his question, her attitude was strangely humble. Lead the way then, Xiao Chen said calmly. He did not bother with her change in attitude. The maid seemed a little nervous, and on the way there she kept mumbling to herself. She did not dare to say anything to Xiao Chen. After she brought Xiao Chen to the first elder's courtyard, she immediately took her leave. When he entered the courtyard, Xiao Chen saw the first elder sitting by the stone table in the middle. The first elder waved at him and Xiao Chen hurriedly walked over. Since Xiao Shang was in closed-door training, the first elder held the highest position. Xiao Chen did not dare to show a sloppy attitude. Seeing Xiao Chen standing in front of the table, the first elder smiled gently. Have a seat, we are family, there is no need to be so reserved. Xiao Chen thanked him and sat down. Then he asked cautiously, I wonder why first elder was looking for me. Xiao Cheng just smiled and picked up the teapot on the stone table to pour Xiao Chen a cup of tea. These tea leaves are the best in the south. It is very difficult to buy this in Kizhi County, try it. Xiao Chen knew nothing about tea, thus he just took a sip before asking again. First elder, why were you looking for me? No rush, let me thank you for Yulin's matter first. Xiao Cheng interrupted Xiao Chen. That girl has been staying on the mountain for years and has always refused to come down. If it were not for you, she would have never come down. I heard from Yulan that your martial spirit is a purple flame. Can I take a look? Xiao Chen nodded his head and a ball of purple flames appeared atop his hands. It continually danced and emitted a strange glow. Xiao Qing focused heavily on the purple thunder true fire in Xiao Chen's hands. He then raised his right hand and gathered some essence. After a moment, a suction force could be felt. When Xiao Chen felt this suction force, he did not resist it and just let Xiao Cheng pull over some of his purple flames. ZZ. Looking at the flame that continually consumed his essence, Xiao Cheng said in satisfaction, this flame is indeed tyrannical. No wonder Xiao Jian got distracted by this. Even with my martial Grand Master cultivation, it would take quite a bit of effort to extinguish this flame. First Elder is just being modest. With First Elder's abilities, this flame would not be able to hurt you at all. Seeing Xiao Chen being so humble, Xiao Cheng felt very satisfied. He casually waved his hand and extinguished the flame. This flame is extremely pure, you can try being an alchemist in the future. The alchemists in the Tianwu continent needed to use fire that came from their martial spirit. This was the basic requirement. Their martial spirit needed to be a fire-attributed spirit beast or holy item. If it was as pure as Xiao Chen's purple thunder true fire, then it was the best. However, the first elder did not know that Xiao Chen's purple thunder true fire was not his actual martial spirit. Xiao Chen nodded his head. I have thought of that before already. However, the requirements for becoming an alchemist is just too high. Even in the whole Mohe city, there are no second-grade alchemist or higher. It would not be easy to get started. Xiao Chen's words were not entirely false. If an alchemist took him in as a disciple, then that would be the best, he would be able to learn faster. However, even without a high-ranked alchemist guiding him, he would still be able to use what he had learned from the Compendium of Cultivation. It would not be too difficult for him to refine pills. Xiao Cheng muttered to himself irresolutely before saying, I have a set of books on the introduction to alchemy, I will get someone to send them to you later. Introductory books on alchemy were not particularly precious, but Xiao Chen was still quite interested in seeing how alchemy worked in this world. Thus, he wanted to take a look. He smiled and said, in that case, thank you First Elder. After speaking for so long, the First Elder still had not told Xiao Chen his true purpose in calling him over. Young Master Xiao, in this year's promise of 10 years duels, I would like you to compete, what do you think? Xiao Chen was still trying to guess the First Elder's purpose for calling him over when he gave Xiao Chen the answer. It was as if he could read Xiao Chen's mind. The promise of 10 years duels, this involved the Seven-Horn Mountain which the Xiao clan relied on for survival. If they lost the duels, then the Xiao clan would become a second-rate clan in Mohe City. When that happened, those clans that had bad blood with the Xiao clan would definitely take action. Let's not even mention the problem of whether Xiao Chen could escape on his own or not. Regardless of the previous Xiao Chen or the current one, they both had feelings for the Xiao clan. If he left, then what would happen to Xiao Yulan? To Xiao Chen's father? Now that he had occupied another person's body, he should shoulder some responsibility. Xiao Chen may have been a shut-in, but he still was a responsible person. Thus, for this promise of 10 years, even if the First Elder did not say anything, Xiao Chen would still do his best to help the Xiao clan to overcome this crisis. After this, then he could be considered even with the Xiao clan. When Xiao Cheng saw Xiao Chen become silent, he thought that Xiao Chen was not willing to agree. This is actually your father's idea. He knows that you have condensed your martial spirit and even defeated Xiao Jian. He is happy for you. My father. Isn't he in closed-door training? Xiao Chen asked with some suspicions. Xiao Qing smiled. Even if he is in closed-door training, he is still human, he needs to eat and drink. I had told the clan head then and he did not seem surprised. He even suggested for you take part in the duels of the promise of 10 years. He didn't feel surprised. Could it be that he knew that I would condense my martial spirit? And that my martial spirit is the Azure Dragon martial spirit? However, from the words of the First Elder, it doesn't seem likely, or else he would not have thought that my Purple Thunder True Fire is my martial spirit. That's right, First Elder, when will my father come out? He has been in closed-door training for 3 years already, right? Even a regular person would not take this long to break through to Martial Saint. Seeing an opportunity to obtain news about Xiao Shang, Xiao Chen immediately asked this question that he had been suppressing in his heart for so long. On the road of martial cultivation, there were 3 important hurdles. The first was to condense a martial spirit. As long as one could condense a martial spirit before the age of 10, then he would definitely reach the martial Grand Master realm. It would just be a matter of time. The second hurdle was when they tried to break through to Martial Saint. If this hurdle could be passed, then they would definitely reach the Martial King realm, or else they would be stuck in the Martial Grand Master realm forever. The final hurdle was breaking into Martial Emperor. This hurdle was ethereal and mysterious. Many people said that after this realm, it was the legendary martial god. However, since there were no records of martial gods, no one could confirm if this rumor was true. Xiao Cheng took a sip of tea and said seriously, the cultivation method your father cultivates is different from others. Good preparation is the key to success. Once he breaks through, he will immediately become a peak martial saint. When this happens, not to mention Mohe City, our Xiao clan would have a place in the whole Kizi County. Of course, all of these things can only happen under one condition, which is if the Seven-Horn Mountain remains under our control. The strength of the Zhang clan had soared rapidly these few years. They are even more unyielding than our Xiao clan and cannot be underestimated. If they obtain the rights to Seven-Horn Mountain, then the outcome for our Xiao clan would be very tragic. Thus, second young master, please consider taking part in this promise of 10 years very seriously. The first elder truly had a way with his words. After speaking for a bit, he could turn the topic back to this. Xiao Chen thought very hard and fast. After he had considered this for a little, he felt that he could make use of this opportunity to seek some benefits from the first elder. After all, Xiao Chen just so happened to be lacking a spirit weapon. He then put on a bitter face. First elder, it is not that I do not want to agree, but look at my empty hands, I don't even have a spirit weapon. Xiao Cheng smiled. You have a big appetite, the first thing you ask for is a spirit weapon. Do you think spirit weapons are so easily obtained? Even Xiao Jian only managed to obtain one after reaching the Martial Master Realm. He had to reach the Martial Master Realm to obtain a spirit weapon. There was such a rule. Only by reaching the Martial Master Realm can one have a spirit weapon. This is the rule of our Xiao clan. However, I do have a few personal spirit weapons, you can pick one. The first elder suddenly changed the topic. This gave Xiao Chen a surprise since he already given up hope. Xiao Cheng waved his hands casually and 4 spirit weapon appeared on the table. Another spatial ring. Xiao Chen envied the grayish-white ring on the first elder's finger. When his purple thunder divine incantation reached the second layer and he learned to forge equipment, he would definitely make a spatial treasure for himself. Xiao Chen turned his gaze to the 4 spirit weapon on the stone table and carefully examined them. 3 of them were swords and only one of them was a saber-shaped spirit weapon. However, these few spirit weapon did not have much of a glow to them. After holding them in his hands, he could determine that these were inferior grade yellow ranked spirit weapons. Inferior grade yellow ranked spirit weapon, this was the trashiest quality of spirit weapons. Xiao Chen felt that it was a pity, but he could not let an unhappy expression show on his face. Usually, when a regular person obtained a spirit weapon, they would feel incredibly happy. How could they feel that it was a pity? In order to prevent the first elder from feeling suspicious, Xiao Chen had to act happy. How is it? Have you chosen one? Seeing Xiao Chen's happy appearance, Xiao Cheng felt quite satisfied. Xiao Chen picked up the saber-shaped spirit weapon. He saw that there were 2 words on the handle, Lunar Shadow. He said, I'll take this Lunar Shadow. The dragon subduing slash required a saber to be used. Xiao Chen had no other choice. The Xiao clan, within Xiao Chen's isolated courtyard. In the Xiao residence, no one was allowed to have their own courtyard except for certain individuals. An individual such as an elder in the clan, an important guest, or a disciple of direct descent like Xiao Chen could have their personal courtyard. Xiao Chen carefully observed the inferior grade yellow ranked spirit weapon, Lunar Shadow. The saber was 1.2 meters long and 2 fingers wide. Its blade was sleek and streamlined. It seemed somewhat similar to a reaper's scythe, but it was not as long. Shutting his eyes, he sank his consciousness into his body. Xiao Chen carefully inspected the power contained within the saber. A faint energy came from the saber and entered Xiao Chen's body, slowly heading toward his dantian. Slowly, this thread-like energy flowed into the Azure Dragon martial spirit in his dantian. A stream of essence followed this thread back and entered the saber. Xiao Chen was incomparably happy because this essence that came from the Azure Dragon was even clearer, purer, and more tyrannical than before. Perhaps it was because the spirit weapon was of a low quality, but the pure essence could only travel via the thin thread to connect with the saber. Xiao Chen could clearly feel that only 10% of the energy from his martial spirit had entered the saber. If his spirit weapon was of a higher quality, then this thread of energy would definitely be thicker. The essence that could be sent back would definitely be more than 10%. He opened his eyes and carefully observed this strange situation. Xiao Chen held Lunar Shadow and brandished it for a while. An electrical glow surrounded the blade and the shadow of the Azure Dragon could be seen flashing on the blade's surface from time to time. Ha! Xiao Chen lightly shouted and leapt up ferociously, hacking thrice with the Lunar Shadow. At that moment, something strange happened. Just as Xiao Chen's strength was exhausted, the martial spirit in his body suddenly sent out a stream of energy. The azure dragon shadow on his blade suddenly discharged a surge energy. This caused the slowly descending Xiao Chen to rise up abruptly. Rising on this energy, Xiao Chen twisted his body in a strange manner and his body actually rose higher again. An unending stream of matchless and surging energy exuded from the azure dragon martial spirit in his body. Kai, Kai, Kai. He hacked out ferociously another 3 times. There was a flash of electrical light and a dragon's roar. Even the clouds thousands of meters above seemed to rumble as the thunder echoed in the distance. After the 3 hacks, Xiao Chen's body rose even higher. At this moment, he was already more than 30 meters above the ground. This was the first time that Xiao Chen had been so high in the air. He could not help but feel anxious and horrified. However, the desire to explore the unknown occupied Xiao Chen's mind. He was filled with a prideful heroic spirit and vaguely wanted to view the land from the heavens. How high can I, Xiao Chen, soar up into the sky? Wah, wah, wah. Xiao Chen hacked another 3 more times and his body rose by another 5 meters. He could now see half of the Xiao residence. It was a good thing that Xiao Chen's courtyard was quite isolated. Otherwise, given his current altitude, he would have been noticed by someone long ago. He repeated his actions another 2 times. Xiao Chen's body was now 70 or 80 meters above the ground. His essence was already half exhausted. Xiao Chen did not dare to expend any more essence. If he ran out of essence, he would die or at least be severely injured when he fell. On the spur of the moment, he sheathed his saber and plummeted downwards like a meteor. A formless azure dragon enveloped Xiao Chen as he blasted through the sky, ferociously smashing towards the ground. The wind howled in Xiao Chen's ear as he shouted loudly. He used the momentum of his fall to send out a lightning-fast strike with his saber. Using that boundless vigor, this strike was heavier than 1,000 jins of force. It had great momentum and had a magnificent and unblockable force. TL note. 1,000 jin is 500 kilograms, but I left it as jin cause 1,000 jin looks nicer than 500 kilograms. Bang! The ground was blasted apart and a huge crater could be seen at the point of impact. Countless rock fragments were blasted into the air, filling the sky. Upon contact with the wind, the rock fragments immediately turned into powder. In an instant, dust was sent flying everywhere. The entire front yard was decimated. Xiao Chen's 4 limbs were spread out as he laid on the ground. He gasped for air with deep breaths. His emotions were hard to describe. Originally he had just wanted to test out the might of the Azure Dragon martial spirit when using a spirit weapon. He did not expect that he would accidentally comprehend a strong martial technique. This martial technique was at the very least a profound grade technique. Furthermore, this martial technique was created by Xiao Chen himself. It was unique in the Tianwu continent. How could he not be excited? He had to think of a name. Let's call it Meteor Burst, smashing against the ground like a meteor, bursting forth with the explosive force of a meteorite. Meteor Burst, Meteor Burst. He repeated this name a few times. The more he said it, the more satisfied he felt. However, was this Meteor Burst truly unique in this world? Actually, it was not. The Azure Dragon martial spirit was very mysterious. The time when it existed was at least thousands of years ago. Dragons were able to change their size at will. They could fly and swim. When they were large, they were able to swallow clouds and blow out fog. When they chose to be small, they were able to be hidden from all things. They could fly to the 9 heavens or hide beneath the waves. Ascending from the ground and soaring into the skies, this was a very normal thing for the Azure Dragon martial spirit. The Azure Dragon martial spirit had many mystical abilities and martial techniques. However, due to its mysterious nature, the Xiao clan had lost the ability to pass them down long ago. The meteor burst that Xiao Chen had executed earlier was actually a long-lost Azure Dragon martial spirit exclusive martial technique, Descending Divine Dragon Chop. This kind of Holy Beast exclusive martial technique was very well preserved in the other clans with Holy Beast martial spirit bloodlines. They did not have to figure it out by themselves like Xiao Chen. When they reached a certain cultivation realm, they could just go to the library to retrieve it easily. They were a lot more fortunate than Xiao Chen. After resting on the ground for a while, Xiao Chen slowly recovered some of his strength. His face was a little pale, these strikes had exhausted too much of his essence. After struggling for a little, he managed to stand up and tidy himself up a little. He then looked at the entrance to the courtyard. He could feel the vibrations of footsteps as a person slowly walking over. The essence in that person's body was weak, it seemed like the person was not a cultivator. After he realized that, he let his guard down. Ah. What happened here? After a short moment, a girl dressed in a maid uniform appeared in Xiao Chen's vision. The maid looked at the dusty front yard that was full of potholes and cried out. Looking at the maid in front of him, Xiao Chen frowned. What's your name? Who sent you here? The maid looked at Xiao Chen, who was covered in dust. He looked like a mudman. She found it funny in her heart and said in a quiet voice, replying to second young master, this servant's name is Bao. The first elder sent me to deliver this book to you. Xiao Chen walked over, received the book, and took a look. It was the introductory alchemy book that the first elder said he would give him. His expression turned warmer and he smiled, thanks. After thanking her, Xiao Chen turned and headed to the bedroom. He wanted to take a new set of clothes and bathe. He felt very uncomfortable with all the dirt sticking to him. However, the maid called Bao did not leave. Instead, she slowly followed him. Xiao Chen felt that it was a little strange. He smiled as he turned around. Why are you not leaving yet? Do you intend to stay here and bathe with me? Bao blushed, her entire face turning a bright red as she muttered in a soft voice, the first elder told me to come here and serve second young master. He said to do whatever second young master says. If second young master wants Bao to take a bath with him, then Bao does not dare to disobey. What? He had only said it casually, but this girl was actually willing to accompany him in the bath. In Xiao Chen's memory, he did not recall that he ever had a maid that served him. To think that the first elder would not only give him a spirit weapon upon request, but he would also give him books on alchemy. In the end, he even sent him a maid to serve him. However, Xiao Chen enjoyed this idea. It was a pity that it was not a time to enjoy himself. If he gave into lust, then he might stumble on his cultivation path. There were many experts in the Tianwu continent. Even if you didn't mention those from far away, he was not even able to deal with Zhonghe from the Zhang clan. How could he lust after this little beauty during this time? He could only put up with this and become a wizard. Only when he finally stood on the peak of the cultivation world would he stay and enjoy the scenery. It would definitely be something that this small Mosati could not compare to. How could I, Xiao Chen, be confined to Mohe City? TL notes. I guess he is referring to the saying that if one remains a virgin after 30, he would become a wizard. Damn, I'm getting close to being a wizard. After thinking for a while, Xiao Chen shook his head. I just said that jokingly, don't take it seriously. I will not ask you to accompany me to bathe. Bao face was already red. After saying those shameful things, her heart was palpitating. She then said in a soft voice, then does young master have any other instructions? Bao is now young master's exclusive maid. Aside from serving young master, there is nothing else for me to do. Xiao Chen scratched his head, unsure of how to handle this situation. This was a tough question. If she did not bathe with him or sleep with him, what else could she do? If Bao knew what Xiao Chen was thinking, she would definitely be very infuriated. Maids did not exist just to sleep with their masters, they had many other things to do. Only a NEET from the 21st century like Xiao Chen would think this way. Right, help me to go to the city to purchase some herbs, said Xiao Chen joyfully after he thought about it for a bit. Too many things had happened today, he was too lazy to make this trip. Coincidentally, there was now a maid that could help him with this. After the battle with Zhonghe and comprehending the meteor burst, he could obviously feel that his essence capacity was insufficient. Whether be it executing a strong martial technique or maintaining a high-intensity purple thunder true fire, he could not sustain it for a long time. This was a serious problem. If he had to undergo a long battle or refine a high-leveled pill, his insufficient essence could be his fatal weakness. The only solution to this was to step up his cultivation and quickly cultivate the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation to the second layer. That way, he would be able to store up more essence in his body. When increasing his cultivation speed, aside from hard work, medicinal pills were a necessity as well. Xiao Chen went to get some paper and ink from the study and began to write. Although he was not used to writing with a brush, the original owner of this body was no stranger to it as he was an original resident of this world. After he finished writing, Xiao Chen blew gently on the paper, trying to dry the ink. He was satisfied with his calligraphy. Xiao Chen then took out his personal seal and gave them to Bao. He smiled and said, "Just follow the list on the paper to purchase the herbs. They are not some rare herbs and should be easily found in ordinary herbs stores in Mohe City. Use my seal to retrieve some money from the accounts branch. You can use the remainder to purchase some rouge or other makeup products for yourself. There is no need to return the change." Bao received the seal while feeling somewhat dumbfounded. She said in disbelief, "Young master, you are asking Bao to run some errands." The work of a maid was normally to serve tea or water, tidy the house or assist their masters in dressing up. Sometimes, there might be special requests to sleep with their master or accompany them for a bath. These were very normal too. However, running errands, this was normally done by the male stewards. Furthermore, Xiao Chen had a very poor reputation in the Xiao clan. Bao did not expect that Xiao Chen would only ask her to run some errands. "If you don't run errands, then what can you do?" "Sleep with me." Xiao Chen smiled. "Why? Are you not able to do it? If you can't, then I will just find someone else." Bao immediately reacted, her small and dainty face filled with a smile as she said joyfully, "I can do it. I definitely can do it, I'll go do it now. Young master, rest assured, Bao will accomplish this task beautifully." Looking at Bao disappearing in an instant, Xiao Chen laughed in satisfaction. It was not bad having a maid, at least he did not have to bother with things like running errands in the future. After he took a bath, Xiao Chen changed into a fresh set of clothes. He laid on his bed and began to read the introductory alchemy book. To lie down and read was a habit he gained from his original world. It was something he did not bother to change even after he came to this world. If someone from this world saw him now, they would be very shocked. Alchemist was the most respected profession in the Tianwu continent. This respect came from their medicines that could heal wounds, their miraculous pills that could change the body's talent for cultivation, and the pills that sped up the speed of cultivation. To every cultivator, alchemy held a certain level of attraction. Alchemists were rare and they were highly demanded. This naturally caused the profession to be respected far more than the others. Xiao Chen flipped through the book page by page. This introductory book was not very thick, it only contained tens of pages. Xiao Chen skimmed through the book and finished it in no time. It was truly just an introductory book, there was no solid content inside and it only provided a brief preview to alchemy. However, Xiao Chen still benefited from this, as he now had a rough understanding of the alchemy in this world. Alchemists in the Tianwu continent could be separated into 7 ranks, with 1 being the lowest and 7 being the highest. All of the ranking examinations were conducted by the Alchemist Association. To become an alchemist, there were 3 prerequisites. First, one needed a fire-attributed martial spirit or a fire-attributed technique. In other words, they needed to have the ability to condense a flame. The second prerequisite was to do with one's knowledge of medicinal herbs. This condition required very solid fundamentals and an individual had to have a very thorough understanding of medicinal herbs and their usage. There were no shortcuts to this, it could be accomplished by rote learning. The third prerequisite was spiritual awareness. This was the vaguest condition and it seemed very enigmatic. Spiritual awareness was similar but distinctly different to perception. Even if an individual had walked very far on the road of cultivation, they still might not be able to awaken their spiritual awareness. Cultivation and spiritual awareness were not directly linked. There were some individuals who had awakened their spiritual awareness and possessed a very great spiritual awareness. However, they did not manage to have any accomplishments in terms of cultivation. The so-called spiritual awareness referred to the intuition, senses and mental connection of the alchemist. The most important of these was their mental connection to medicinal ingredients. If their mental connection could be fast, stable, and meticulous, then they would be able to go far on the path of alchemy. Xiao Chen thought about these 3 prerequisites and checked himself. He had the purple thunder true fire, thus he had naturally cleared the first prerequisite. Additionally, he had memorized the chapter on refining pills in the Compendium of Cultivation and was able to recall the information on medicinal ingredients in detail. After reading the Compendium of Cultivation for 3 years, he was already as familiar with it as the back of his palm. Furthermore, he had discovered that the medicinal ingredients of this world were the same as those recorded in the Compendium of Cultivation. Thus, Xiao Chen had cleared the second prerequisite too. As for the third prerequisite, it seemed very mysterious. The Compendium of Cultivation did not have any records of spiritual awareness in the chapter on refining pills. However, he was not worried. After all, the alchemy recorded in the Compendium of Cultivation was slightly different from this world's. Even if he did not have spiritual awareness or only had a weak spiritual awareness, he was still confident that he could learn to refine pills. If he could not become an alchemist of this world, he would follow the method recorded on the Compendium of Cultivation instead. Furthermore, the pills recorded on the Compendium of Cultivation were more profound and mysterious than the pills of this world. For example, he intended to refine the fasting pill. This pill would remove the need to eat or drink for a month after its consumption. This kind of effect was unheard of in this world. When the sky had almost darkened, Bao finally returned with a big bag of medicinal herbs. After he saw her sweat-covered and dusty appearance, Xiao Chen felt somewhat disturbed. This girl did not look older than 14 or 15 years old. In his original world, she would still be in middle school. He said in an apologetic tone, "I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you that I did not urgently need these medicinal herbs and that you could take your time." As Bao wiped her sweat with her small hands, she heard these words and was stunned. Did I hear incorrectly? The famous prodigal son of the Xiao clan actually apologized to a maid. When Xiao Chen was still trash, he had a very bad reputation. Although he defeated Xiao Jian and proved that he was not trash, they still did not have a good impression of Xiao Chen. Everyone said that he was a vile person that was intoxicated by success, becoming even more overbearing than before. There were even rumors that he had taught everyone who had humiliated him in the past a lesson. Bao had heard plenty of these rumors. If Xiao Chen knew of these rumors, he would definitely become incomparably depressed. When he saw Bao stunned expression, Xiao Chen felt a little worried and asked in a soft voice, "Are you alright? Are you not feeling well?" Bao quickly recovered her wits. She was not used to Xiao Chen's tone, thus she blushed and replied in a soft voice, "Bao is fine, many thanks for young master's concern." Xiao Chen relaxed, "Go back first, there is nothing else for you to do for now." When Bao heard these words, she looked at Xiao Chen in surprise and said nervously, "Is young master chasing me away? The first elder said that I am now your personal maid and will stay here from now on. If you chase me out, the first elder will think that I did not serve you well and will punish me." Xiao Chen did not expect such a situation. These servants and maids were all orphans or the children of poor families. They had already been sold away. Even if they were beaten to death as a punishment, the offender would not be held responsible. Although the Xiao clan was not that strict, there would still be some form of punishment. Xiao Chen frowned. He had never been in such a situation before. There was plenty of space in Xiao Chen's courtyard, but he had too many secrets. Having a stranger by his side made him feel uneasy. After thinking for a long time, Xiao Chen did not manage to think of a solution that would benefit both sides. Looking at the pitiful Bao, Xiao Chen's heart softened. "Stay here first then. There is an empty side room in the east wing, you can stay there tonight." Bao said joyfully. Bao thanks the second young master. I will go and prepare supper for second young master now. Xiao Chen looked on helplessly as Bao left and shook his head. He then turned his attention to the medicinal herbs she brought back and inspected them carefully. 20 saffron, 50 star anise, 20 spearmints, 20 tiger paw grass. Xiao Chen carefully counted them one by one. This girl was quite capable, she had brought back the exact amount that he had requested. Xiao Chen smiled to himself as he picked up a stalk of tiger paw grass to examine it carefully. The topmost part of the foot-long grass had 4 purplish green leaves. As he looked at this stalk of tiger paw grass, that was no more than 10 years old, he felt quite puzzled. Xiao Chen thought, what is this spiritual awareness? How do I make a mental connection with a herb? He held the herb gently in his hands and closed his eyes as he sank his consciousness downwards. His consciousness followed his essence as it slowly moved towards his right hand. His essence left his body and wrapped around the herb gently. However, his consciousness was stuck in his body, hindered by the skin and flesh of his palm. It was unable to break out of his body. Even after he attempted a few times, his consciousness was still unable to make any kind of connection with the tiger paw grass. Consciousness and spiritual awareness were quite different. Just as Xiao Chen was able to give up, his consciousness that was hovering around his palm suddenly managed to catch a hold of a strange green energy net. There were many small threads of energy that flowed into his body via the essence from the green energy net. It rapidly connected together with his consciousness and a green space immediately appeared in Xiao Chen's consciousness. Within this green space, there was a complicated network of threads. It looked like a complex maze. Streams of this green energy extended everywhere in this green space. The energy then firmly connected with Xiao Chen's consciousness. In that instant, Xiao Chen felt as though he could feel the tiger paw grass breath and pulse. It was a very mysterious feeling. Xiao Chen felt incomparably joyfully. This must be that spiritual awareness. Within that firm connection, he felt as if the herb was part of him. Under such a state, he would be able to bring his understanding and control of the herb to a deeper level. During a refinement, he would be able to accomplish twice the effect with half the effort. It was no wonder that spiritual awareness was a requirement to becoming a good alchemist. As he withdrew his consciousness, a stream of green energy traveled from the meridians in his hand to his sea of consciousness. After the green energy circulated a few times, it formed a green sphere and merged with Xiao Chen's consciousness. He was puzzled by this green sphere in his sea of consciousness. However, he decided not to bother with this sphere. With his rudimentary understanding of the alchemy of this world, he probably would not understand anything. He tossed aside his bewilderment as he opened his eyes and looked at the tiger paw grass once again. He now had a deeper understanding of the herb. Its root also had many medicinal properties. It was not like what was written in the book wrote, which stated that only the leaves were useful. With this deeper understanding, he was even more confident in his ability to refine pills later. Taking out the Azure Dragon medicine cauldron, Xiao Chen condensed the Purple Thunder True Fire and began his first attempt at refinement. He aimed to refine a fasting pill. In the Compendium of Cultivation, the fasting pill was among the pills of the lowest grade in the immortal world. Only a few cultivators who had not reached a realm where they did not need to eat would take this pill. Thus, it was very suitable for his usage. Xiao Chen placed the tiger paw grass into the Purple Thunder True Fire and carefully started to refine it. He controlled the Purple Thunder True Fire's strength attentively. Xiao Chen did not dare to be even slightly careless. The 4 green leaves quickly melted to become 4 clear drops of green liquid. This green liquid continuously boiled in the cauldron. Xiao Chen took out a porcelain bottle he had prepared earlier. With a flick of his finger, he poured the liquid into the bottle. Next up, Xiao Chen focused his gaze on the unmelted root. Before he awakened his spiritual awareness, he would have treated this root as garbage and thrown it out. Now that he knew of its medicinal properties, he naturally would not throw it out. The roots were tougher than the leaves, thus he had to raise the temperature of his flames. Xiao Chen slowly increased the strength of the Purple Thunder True Fire. Controlling this flame seemed easy, but it was very tiring. Furthermore, it tested his abilities to control his flame to its extremes. If the flame was too small, it would not be able to extract the medicinal liquid. If it was too big, the medicinal liquid would be burned. Only at that perfect size could he successfully extract the medicinal liquid. It was a good thing that the Compendium of Cultivation had described this very clearly. As long as he was careful, it should not be too hard to achieve. After he extracted 5 drops of green liquid from the roots, the table was filled up with some waste products. Xiao Chen quickly took out another 5 stalks of tiger paw grass to refine. However, he was not as fortunate this time. Even when he knew how much to increase the size of the flames by, he still damaged 2 stalks of the tiger paw grass. It was a good thing that Xiao Chen had anticipated this situation and had gotten Bao to purchase 2 times the materials that he needed. All in all, he managed to extract 50 drops of medicinal liquid from the tiger paw grass before he stopped. Extracting a sufficient amount of tiger paw grass medicinal liquid was just a small part of the initial step. Next up was to extract the medicinal liquid from 3 other medicinal herbs. After taking a small break, Xiao Chen retrieved a saffron and held it in his hands. He tried to use his spiritual awareness to establish a mental connection with it. He focused his attention and the green sphere in his sea of consciousness took on the shape of a brook-like, long, and jade-green line. It traveled through the meridians in his arms and exited his body. The green line, which was invisible to the naked eye, made a connection to the brightly colored saffron. Instantly, a bright red space appeared within Xiao Chen's consciousness, as though it was right in front of his eyes. This time, Xiao Chen gained a deeper understanding of this medicinal herb's inner space. Those flowing red threads should be the medicinal properties of the saffron. The area that had the densest amount of threads was the place with the most medicinal properties. Thus, he could afford to be careless when it came to the other areas. After a while, Xiao Chen opened his eyes and rescinded this strange state. After experiencing this mental connection, he now had a rough understanding of the sphere in his sea of consciousness. The green sphere could be a spiritual core consolidated after he awakened his spiritual awareness. However, he did not know what level of aptitude this spiritual core, which was as small as a green pea, was considered to be at. Gathering his thoughts, Xiao Chen circulated the purple thunder divine incantation once again, condensing the purple thunder true fire. He began to extract the medicinal liquid in the saffron, extracting a total of 50 drops of red medicinal liquid. Following that, he extracted the medicinal liquid of the star anise and spearmint, both of them yielding 50 drops of medicinal liquid each. Looking at the 4 porcelain bottles on the table, Xiao Chen took a breather and wiped the sweat off his forehead. The first step in refining the fasting pill had finally been completed. That alone had actually already exhausted half of all the essence in his body. The second step was to form the pill. It required the supplementation of an enormous amount of essence. If he came up deficient in essence whilst in the midst of this step, everything would be for naught. Xiao Chen could only temporarily give up on proceeding with the second step and circulated his cultivation technique to slowly restore the exhausted essence. Essence. At this moment, Xiao Chen desired nothing more than a larger capacity for essence. If he had a sufficient reserve of essence, then this would never have been an issue in the first place. He was only attempting to refine the most basic medicinal pill. If he were to try refining a pill of a higher grade, he would not even be able to last through the first step. After half an hour, Xiao Chen stopped cultivating. The essence in his body had been fully restored, which was now sufficient for him to carry on with the second step of cultivation. Picking up the Azure Dragon medicinal cauldron, Xiao Chen condensed the purple thunder true fire and thrust it into the opening for fire on the Azure Dragon medicinal cauldron. The purple fire burned ferociously in the cauldron. First of all, he poured the tiger paw grass medicinal liquid in. Under the purification of the purple thunder true fire, the viscous liquid continued to churn, giving off a zzz sound. The medicine cauldron began to give off a faint fragrance. Xiao Chen mentally kept track of the time and poured the second medicinal liquid in after a minute. After 4 minutes, all the medicinal liquids in the 4 porcelain bottles were emptied into the medicinal cauldron. Xiao Chen placed the cauldron lid on and continued to supply essence to the purple thunder true fire in the medicinal cauldron. An invisible thread connected to the purple thunder true fire in the medicinal cauldron made the essence in his body flow out in a steady stream, which kept the purple flames alive. This was the disadvantage of not having spiritual sense. If Xiao Chen could cultivate his purple thunder divine incantation to the second layer and attain spiritual sense, he could directly use it to control the strength of the purple thunder true fire. He would not have to wastefully spend his essence as he did at present. Within the Azure Dragon medicinal cauldron, the 4 medicinal liquids of different colors continuously churned before slowly fusing together, turning into a viscous liquid that was continuously spinning. At this moment, the smell of medicine started to turn denser in the room. Xiao Chen, who was without spiritual sense, was not able to see the situation inside the medicinal cauldron. He could only judge based on the fragrance that came out from the medicinal cauldron that the 4 types of medicinal liquid had already fused together. At this moment, he could no longer use a fierce flame to purify it. He had to follow the direction of the spinning ball of medicinal liquid, controlling the purple thunder true fire to wrap around it from a distance. The purple thunder true fire also had to slowly rotate in sync with it, and the temperature had to be adjusted. Sweat continuously trickled down from Xiao Chen's forehead, as this was a delicate step that exhausted more essence than simply brute forcing a fierce flame to purify the medicinal liquid. Each time the flames made a complete revolution, Xiao Chen felt the reserve of essence in his body wither significantly. If he ran into a situation where he ran out of essence, then everything he had done so far would be for naught. The medicinal fragrance within the house took on another change. Xiao Chen could finally breathe easy. There was about a tenth of his essence left in his body. The situation that he was the most worried about, running out of essence, did not occur, fortunately. This bit of essence was enough to complete the final step in refining this pill. Under the purification of the warm flames, the medicinal liquid in the cauldron had already condensed into a rough sphere-shaped pill embryo. A faint fragrance wafted out from the cauldron. As long as the final step of solidifying it was completed, then this fasting pill would be completed. Xiao Chen opened up the cauldron lip, in which an even thicker fragrance wafted out and assaulted his nose. Looking at the rough pill embryo in the medicinal cauldron, Xiao Chen felt extremely content. For him to be able to make it all the way to this step without committing any major mistakes during his first refinement was very gratifying. If he could perfectly complete the final step, then it would be ideal. Xiao Chen's eyes seemed to burn with excitement, but his heart remained extremely calm. This final step was the most important step. There was no room for mistakes. Xiao Chen guided the purple thunder true fire to slowly rise into the air, and the rough pill embryo similarly followed the purple fire and rose up into the air. He stretched out his right hand and the pill embryo surrounded by purple fire slowly descended onto his palm. It was time to solidify it and shape it. With his attention fully honed in on it, Xiao Chen's eyebrows were tightly knit into a frown. This would only happen in a situation where someone was concentrating extremely hard. Hu Kai. The pill embryo spun rapidly within the flames, and Xiao Chen did not even dare to let go of his breath. The sweat glistened on his forehead as it incessantly poured down his face, trickling downwards. The uneven pill embryo started to smoothen out and turn into a perfect sphere, and even a faint glow began to surround the pill. Only once this step was completed could the fasting pill be considered a true pill. Xiao Chen pushed down ferociously with his hand, sending the pill back into the cauldron. After closing the lid, he began the final heating. At this moment, Xiao Chen still did not dare to relent in his focus. Until the pill came out of the cauldron, he had not succeeded. However, there was not much risk anymore. Before this fasting pill could be considered complete, it simply needed another half a day to simmer. Second young master, supper is already ready, do you want to eat yet? Bang. Right at this moment, the sudden appearance of Bao-Er's voice caused Xiao Chen to lose focus. In the instant he lost focus, he did not control the flames in the medicinal cauldron properly. Thus, the medicinal pill that was almost completed shattered into pieces. From the other dragon head of the Azure Dragon medicinal cauldron, a stream of debris from the medicinal pill began to flow out. Damn! What are you doing here at this moment? Xiao Chen shouted angrily in the direction of the door, at Bao-Er. All his efforts were squandered just like that. It was not easy for the refining process to proceed all the way to this final moment. Xiao Chen's mood was soured to an extreme. His sweat-filled face coupled with his livid expression made him look very terrifying. When Bao-Er, who was outside, saw Xiao Chen angrily shouting at her, and then seeing the situation on the table, she knew that she was in trouble. Her tiny face had turned extremely pale from fright, and the tray of supper trembled in her hands as she held onto it. Tears began to trickle down from her eyes as she replied like a little mouse scared witless, "Second young master, I did not do that on purpose." Xiao Chen, who had exhausted all of his essence and had entered an extremely weak state of mind, merely waved his hands impatiently, "Go out, there is nothing for you to do here." After half a day, Xiao Chen recovered some of his strength. He then felt regret. What's wrong with me? It was just a failure at refining a pill. Why did he lose his temper at a little girl? Had he really begun to fancy himself as a young master? With this little bit of strength and status, he had already started losing his temper in such a manner. In that case, how was he different from the Zhang clan and their prodigal sons? It was just a failed attempt at the refinement of a medicinal pill. If he failed the first time, he could just attempt it again. He had no need to vent his anger on a little girl. The more Xiao Chen thought about it, the more he felt that he was in the wrong. He got up and headed towards Bao-Er's room. The light in her room was not out yet. Xiao Chen, as he stood in front of the door, could hear the gentle sobbings coming from inside. Creak. He gently pushed the door open. Maybe because she came back in a hurry, but the door to her room was not locked and was opened with just a gentle push. When Bao-Er, who was sitting at the bedside, saw Xiao Chen push open the door and enter, she hurriedly wiped away the tears in her eyes and shivered as she inquired carefully, "Second young master. Why are you here? Just now. I really did not do it on purpose." "Oh, Xiao Chen, such an innocent young lady and you scared her to such a degree. You really are horrible." Xiao Chen scolded himself in his heart. He was not able to speak the words of apology he had thought of earlier on the way here. After he saw the supper that was placed on the table, a bowl of squid porridge, he replied, "I am here for supper, as well as to check up on you." When Xiao Chen finished saying that, he picked up the squid porridge on the table and began to eat with gusto. It tasted pretty good. Normally, the kitchens would not provide supper, so this should have been made by Bao-Er personally. It is very tasty. Did you make it yourself? And, I can cook pretty well. I have learned from my mother when I was young. Bao-Er said in a soft voice. Looking at Xiao Chen, who seemed happier after eating the porridge, Bao-Er asked tentatively, "Second young master, are you still angry at me?" "Yes." Xiao Chen slammed down the bowl on the table. His face seemed extremely stern. Bao-Er's heart started to thump very hard in response. "Just kidding with you. I am angry that you made too little squid porridge today. I'm punishing you by making you make more tomorrow." Xiao Chen suddenly softened his expression into a smile. Bao-Er's tear-stained face immediately lit up with a smile as she said in disbelief, "Really?" Xiao Chen got up and walked over to Bao-Er, wiping away the tears on her face. He replied in a sincere tone, "Really, the squid porridge tastes very good. I should not have lost my temper at you earlier. Don't think too much of it and have a good sleep." Within a secret chamber in the Xiao clan, there were two men dressed in embroidered clothes. They were looking at a corpse that was lying on the ground. If Xiao Chen was here, he would definitely be shocked. The corpse lying on the ground could be identified as the Zhang clan first elder who had died in the Thunder Emperor's cave. These two men were the most influential and part of the highest echelon in the Xiao clan. One of them was the Xiao clan first elder, Xiao Chang. The other was the reclusive Xiao clan head, Xiao Shang. Xiao Shang knelt down and casually flipped the corpse over. When was he discovered? The corpse had already been rotting for a period of time, as proven by the faint stench of a corpse in the air. Xiao Chang wrinkled his nose. 10 days ago. When the guards were out on patrol, they found him. You've been in secluded training all this time, which is what made it inconvenient to bring the body over to you. After pausing for a while, Xiao Chang continued, "This fellow died of the poinsettia's poison. I've asked Yulan about this and have confirmed her involvement. She has also told me about what happened." Xiao Shang got up and carefully listened to Xiao Chang's depiction of recent events. When he heard about that mysterious martial saint in blue, his expression had a slight change, but it recovered almost immediately. After listening to the whole thing, there seemed to be a teasing expression on his face. This old fellow was always so hung up on going against us, but this time, he died at the hands of a junior in the martial master realm. I wonder how he felt about that. Xiao Chang laughed with second-hand embarrassment. He did not continue Xiao Shang's topic but instead asked with concern in his voice, "Are you not worried at all about that mysterious martial saint coming to Mohe City?" Xiao Shang's expression changed greatly as he revealed a bitter smile. Ever since the Xiao clan established itself in this tiny Mohe city, those fallen supreme clans did not manage to survive a day past that. Those elders of the Xiao clan believed that we have benefited, so what is the point of me worrying? If these dancing clowns want to target my Xiao clan, As long as I, Xiao Shang, still have a breath in me, even if I turn into ash, I will take my revenge. With the change in topic, Xiao Shang's eyes had a resolute gleam that could easily inspire a sense of conviction in people. Xiao Chang naturally understood what Xiao Shang meant by his words. Ever since he became the first elder, he knew how strong the enemies of the Xiao clan had been back then. It had not been easy for the Xiao clan to survive till today. At the end of the day, their enemies now compared to then were not even worth mentioning in the same breath. From Yulin's description, the martial spirit of the person in blue should be a rock. Within Qixi County, there is only one martial saint with this martial spirit. The third elder of Qing City's Leng clan. The Leng clan, they were fully deserving of their title as the #1 clan in all of Qixi County. With the backing of the Misty Sword sect, they had expanded very rapidly in the past few years, and their influence had reached all the way to Haishui City, a city very close to Mohe City. It made sense if they allied with the Zhang clan to deal with the Xiao clan. Xiao Shang did not seem interested in these news. Without changing his facial expression, he spoke with mild bemusement. All they want is our Xiao clan's Seven-Horn Mountain. The promise of 10 years was established by the city lord of Mohe City, so even if the Leng clan had the Misty Sword sect backing them, they would not dare to make any careless moves. How is the thing that I asked you to investigate in the day? The martial spirit of the second young master is indeed an extremely strange purple fire that is relatively tyrannical. Although Xiao Chang had his suspicions regarding Xiao Shang's overt concern about Xiao Chen's martial spirit, he still spoke truthfully about what he knew. Xiao Shang revealed a trace of a relaxed expression, then as he agreed to participate in the promise of 10 years. Seeing Xiao Shang ask this question, Xiao Chang's usually stern face revealed a trace of a relaxed smile. He agreed. This fellow is very crafty. He actually managed to rip off a spirit weapon from me. Ellipsis. At this moment, Xiao Chen, who was still in Bao-Er's room, naturally did not know that the two greatest authorities in the Xiao clan were talking about him. After he took his leave from Bao-Er's room, Xiao Chen put his emotions in check and began to proceed with the second attempt at refining the fasting pill. After the experience from the first time, Xiao Chen was able to refine this smoothly and easily. Without any mishaps, after 2 hours, the fasting pill successfully formed its shape and solidified. In one breath, Xiao Chen had placed the pill back in the Azure Dragon medicinal cauldron. After simmering for 10 minutes, Xiao Chen extinguished the purple thunder true fire. Ka! There was a flash of brilliance as a glowing pill came out from the other dragon head with a plop, falling into the bottle that Xiao Chen had prepared earlier. Wiping away the sweat dotting his forehead, Xiao Chen revealed a smile laced with a trace of contentment. This fasting pill was finally a success. However, this was only just the beginning. The fasting pill may be mystical, but it had no practical uses for cultivating. He only made it to familiarize himself with the art of refining medicines. Next, he intended to refine the essence nurturing pill and qi returning pill. These were the pills that he wanted to have. As for the qi returning pill, after consuming it, the spiritual energy one has exhausted will begin to rapidly recover. Its effects were similar to the essence returning pill of the Tianwu continent. If a situation arises where a cultivator has exhausted all of his essence or have had a great expenditure in essence, the perk in having a pill to recover essence, regardless of it being in battle or refining medicines, would yield tremendous help in such clutch situations. As for the essence nurturing pill, it was of even greater use. It could increase the cultivation speed of a low realm cultivator. This was something that Xiao Chen needed in order to quickly cultivate to the second layer of the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation. Similar pills in the Tianwu continent would require at least a grade 5 alchemist to refine. If Xiao Chen did not have the Compendium of Cultivation, and the fact that the recipe and alchemy methods were different from this world, let alone with his current cultivation realm, he would have no way to refine a pill like this. However, Xiao Chen was not in a rush to make these two pills. Instead, he continued to refine the fasting pill. In the Compendium of Cultivation, these two pills were of similar grades to the fasting pill, but the difficulty in refining them was much greater. If he attempted to refine one of them without careful consideration, his chance of failure would be enormous. Furthermore, Xiao Chen was only able to get Bao to purchase one set of ingredients for these 2 pills, as he did not have enough money. Yes, he indeed did not have enough money. Every month, Xiao Chen would receive an allowance of 1,000 silver taels from the Xiao clan. This was sufficient to purchase plenty of materials for the fasting pills. However, it would be hard to purchase large amounts of materials for the Qi returning pill and essence nurturing pill. If he factored in the rate of failure, then the amount of money needed would essentially be multiplied. With regards to his lack of money, Xiao Chen had already thought of a solution and therefore did not feel too worried about it. His gaze was currently fixed on the fasting pill within that jade bottle. The most important thing now was improving his familiarity with alchemy. Taking out the ingredients as outlined in the recipe for the fasting pill, Xiao Chen began to tirelessly refine one after the other. Time flew by without him realizing it, and only when his mind was completely exhausted did he cease refining the pills. Glancing towards the jade bottle filled with fasting pills, Xiao Chen revealed a contented smile. This bottle had 20 fasting pills in it. With all the continuous practice, he had grown more and more familiar with the intricacies of alchemy. He had only failed once as a result of a mistake. Sitting down cross-legged, he observed his dantian and circulated the purple thunder divine incantation. Xiao Chen began to slowly recover the exhausted essence. Threads of essence in the room now saturated with a medicinal fragrance slowly entered his body before finally merging with the 3 white clouds beside the azure dragon martial spirit. While in cultivation, Xiao Chen lost all concept of time. And when he opened his eyes once again, the sky was bright already. He stretched his body, causing his stiff joints to pop into place with a cracking sound. His body felt incomparably relaxed as, in fact, the exhaustion from the previous night had completely vanished. "Young master, can I come in? I have brought water for you to wash up with." Bao voice called out from outside the door. Xiao Chen hurriedly got up to open the door. Seeing Bao face filled with a smile, Xiao Chen felt relieved. It seems that Bao had already forgiven him for last night's matter. "Ah, young master, your room is very fragrant." As he had refined a large batch of fasting pills the previous night, the dense medicinal fragrance had not completely dissipated yet. The invigorating fragrance wafted over Bao, placating her nerves and improving her mood with a single whiff. As for the fact that he was able to refine medicines, Bao already knew about it last night. It was now impossible to hide it from her, so he might as well just spill the beans. "I was refining medicines last night. That's why the room is very fragrant. I temporarily do not want to let others know that I can refine medicines, so can Bao help me keep this secret?" Although refining medicine was not a big deal, letting people know about it would undoubtedly attract a lot of trouble. He could at present only hope that Bao was trustworthy enough to keep his secret. After all, towards this 14-year-old or 15-year-old girl, he did not have the heart to do something such as permanently silencing her. Bao nodded her head very seriously. "Second young master, don't worry, Bao will not tell anyone else. Young master probably has not washed your face yet, let Bao help you with it." After Bao had laid down her solemn promise, she picked up a wet cloth very naturally and brought it up to Xiao Chen's face. Having the advantage in how cultivation promoted early growth spurts, Xiao Chen towered over Bao and made it difficult for her to reach him. Even after Bao stretched her hand out, she had to tiptoe. Seeing Bao struggle amused Xiao Chen. He stretched his hand out and grabbed her hand and took the cloth from her. "This young master still has hands and feet. This much I can do myself, so you don't have to do this in the future." After her hands were grabbed, Bao face went red as she asked in a soft voice, "Then what else can Bao do?" Seeing the lovable Bao mutter in a soft voice, Xiao Chen felt a ripple in his heart. An impulse to attack her filled his veins with a throb. Xiao Chen shook his head vigorously before regaining his wits. He noticed the messy bed. "Help me tidy the bed up, and then later come and clean the room up, and that will be it." Bao answered with an N, and proceeded to joyfully run over. As long as she had something to do, she would be happy. After washing his face, Xiao Chen held and observed the jade bottle filled with the fasting pills. "I will be going into the city later. When you are done with all these, you can spend some time doing whatever you want. There is no need to stay here. Okay. Bao answered somewhat helplessly. Earlier, she was afraid that Xiao Chen would want her to do something shameless, but now she knew that Xiao Chen was not that kind of person. Gradually, a feeling of having nothing to do began to overcome her. Leaving the Xiao residence, Xiao Chen found an isolated area and wore a loose black cloak, covering up his entire body before heading towards Mohe City in a hurry. The three great clans of Mohe City, the Xiao clan, Zhang clan, and Tang clan, all had large amounts of real estate and shops. However, the most profitable place was the auction hall, but the three great clans had never ventured into this market. This is because of the existing auction hall, Linlang Pavilion. Linlang Pavilion was the largest auction hall within the Great Qin nation. There were branches in all of the 36 counties in the 9 prefectures, and their backer was none other than the emperor's son-in-law, Nangong Lai. Being the relative of the emperor, as well as having the tremendous influence of the Nangong clan behind him, naturally no one would dare to offend him when he had such a background. Maybe in some of the larger prefecture cities or the imperial capital there might be some powers that were able to go against the Nangong clan and be daring enough to open auction houses. However, in this insignificant Mohe city, no one would dare to slight them by opening a second auction house. Linlang Pavilion was Xiao Chen's current destination. If he wanted to earn some quick wads of cash without exposing his identity as an alchemist to the Xiao clan or selling the moonstones in his room, he could only rely on the fasting pills he had refined in his room the previous night. After he adjusted the cloak on his body, and saw the lavish signboard of Linlang Pavilion, a smile played at Xiao Chen's lips under the shadow of his cowl as he slowly walked into Linlang Pavilion. Due to the fact that there were fewer people here, Mohe City's Linlang Pavilion would only hold a small-scale auction once every month, a medium-scale auction every 3 months, and a large-scale auction once a year. When the time came for the large-scale auction, Mohe City would enter its most busy, bustling state. Looking at the calendar, it was almost the end of the month. There were a lot of people looking at the goods in the Great Hall of the first floor. Undoubtedly, these people were not of high status in Mohe City. Amongst them, there were many from the three great clans. Xiao Chen noticed many familiar people from the Xiao clan, but this was not the time to fraternize with kin. Xiao Chen suddenly sensed danger incoming from behind him, and a palm strike struck out towards him shortly after. Reacting quickly and stepping forward, Xiao Chen turned around almost instantly and made his move. Pu Kai. With a deft hand, he grabbed the wrist of some unfamiliar stranger. Xiao Chen applied some force to his wrist, causing the individual to wince in pain. With a stern expression, the assailant shouted, "You bastard! Let me go!" This person was dressed in martial robes with alternating colors of blue and white, seeming to be about 27 or 28 years old, and his cultivation realm appeared to be in the medial grade martial disciple. There was a yellow daisy embroidered on his collar. When Xiao Chen saw it, he immediately understood that this person should be a guard of Linlang Pavilion. However, despite this, he did not have any intentions of letting go. He instead increased the strength in his hand and asked coldly, "Why did you make a move against me?" The person in question shouted out in pain once again and scolded, "You bastard! Let go quickly or forget about walking out of this Linlang Pavilion." The sound of these two people attracted a crowd of people, most beholding Xiao Chen with a certain amount of ridicule in their gazes. It was obvious to these people that his cultivation was only in the inferior grade martial disciple realm. Merely an insignificant inferior grade martial disciple, and he dares to come and cause trouble at Linlang Pavilion. How reckless. Very soon, a large group of people wearing similar blue and white robes came running over, each and every one of them with a yellow daisy embroidered on their collar. Under the command of a martial master, they surrounded Xiao Chen. The martial master among them had thick eyebrows and big eyes, and his body was robust and sturdy. The expression on his face now was incomparably cautious. He did not look angry or irritable. After looking at Xiao Chen, he frowned slightly, looked at the man restrained by Xiao Chen, and asked in a cold voice, "Gao Long, what's going on?" Gao Long, who was restrained by Xiao Chen, had an expression of incomparable pain on his face. There were currents of electricity continuously flowing from Xiao Chen's hand into his body. This caused him to be unable to gather his essence. When his essence encountered this electrical current, it would immediately disperse without a trace, resulting in him being unable to release himself from Xiao Chen's grip. Captain. This person is dressed in a suspicious manner. After he entered the Great Hall, he looked around in a shifty-eyed manner. I was afraid that he had some wicked motives, and wanted to detain him for questioning. Gao Long's voice trembled as he spoke. He was a medial grade martial disciple, yet he got restrained by an inferior grade martial disciple. Even if he was in the right, he had lost the face of Linlang Pavilion. He would definitely not be able to escape the captain's punishment. Thinking of the inevitable punishment awaiting him, Gao Long could not help but tremble. The superior grade martial master that was addressed as captain looked at Xiao Chen's attire and also felt suspicious in his heart. The people who entered their pavilion were typically either dressed in bright, colorful clothes or in top-notch satin clothes. Just who would dress up as strangely as Xiao Chen did. Covered completely in the subterfuge of a cloak, he had the appearance of someone with secrets to keep. My friend, I am Zhang Qi, the commanding officer of the guard on the first floor of Linlang Pavilion. I wonder what business you have here. Are you here to purchase anything? Although he had already formed his own opinion about Xiao Chen, Zhang Qi still maintained a cautious attitude and made his inquiries with sobriety. No. The cloak completely covered Xiao Chen's face in shadows, so what he looked like was a mystery. When the restrained Gao Long heard this, his expression turned to one of joy. This man was not here to buy anything, which naturally meant that he must be here to cause trouble. Since that was the case, this fellow would not step out of here alive. He laughed sinisterly in his heart, and the pain from his hand began to feel less intense due to the solace he found in this statement. Then what is your purpose here? Visiting a friend. Zhang Qi continued to ask patiently, but a killing intent previously kept under covers came billowing out without restraint. As long as Xiao Chen's answer was not satisfactory, he would immediately make a move. Anyone that was here to cause trouble in Linlang Pavilion only had one outcome: death. Zhang Qi's superior grade martial master aura spread out into the surrounding area, his killing intent locking down onto Xiao Chen. The biting cold killing intent even caused the surrounding people to shiver. Their gazes as they looked at Xiao Chen was as though they were looking at a dead man. Everyone around could feel the thick killing intent. Actually, this was a result of an insufficient cultivation base. The killing intent of a true expert could form into a string-like network, focusing all of their killing intent only on the target and leaving any irrelevant onlookers in their surroundings untouched. Xiao Chen, who was now surrounded by the killing intent, did not display any fear and simply spoke casually, I do not have any friends here. Zhang Qi laughed coldly, forgive me for this offense then. Who? The surrounding air seemed to turn cold, and a thick, cold qi gathered around his body. Ice covered his fist as he shouted out loudly and threw a punch at Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen took a step back and spun Gao Long's body around in the air, ruthlessly throwing him towards Zhang Qi. He then unhurriedly took out the jade bottle containing the fasting pills and gently opened the bottle cap. A thick medicinal fragrance immediately spread out and pervaded the surroundings. Very soon, the entire great floor of the first floor was fully saturated in this fragrance. What pill is this? Why is it so fragrant? Could this fellow be an alchemist? I think it is very likely. The behavior of those alchemists are usually very strange. He wouldn't be this calm if that wasn't the case. The chatter of the crowd quickly filled the entire great hall, every conversation discussing this fragrance. These people were all people of some status and had encountered genuine pills before, but they had never come across a pill with such a rich and thick fragrance. Instantly, they viewed Xiao Chen as a mysterious alchemist of high rank. The corners of Xiao Chen's mouth curved upwards under the cloak. Is there no one that wants to do business here in such a big Linlang Pavilion? Zhang Qi, who had just caught Gao Long, casually threw away the young guard to the ground. When he heard Xiao Chen's words and saw the bottle of pills in Xiao Chen's hand, he knew that he might have gotten himself into some trouble. He hurriedly cusped his hands. Senior, pardon me for my poor manners. My humble self is dumb, so please forgive me. Although Xiao Chen's strength was only in the inferior grade martial disciple realm, it would be normal for Zhang Qi to address him as senior if he was capable of refining high-grade pills. Gao Long laid on the ground, groaning in pain. Xiao Chen had used a great deal of force when he threw him towards Zhang Qi. Coupled with Zhang Qi casually tossing him away, his whole body was now in pain. After hearing Zhang Qi's words, Gao Long felt as though his whole body had been drenched in cold water. He was extremely unlucky today. He had actually treated an alchemist like a suspicious criminal and offended him. Xiao Chen did not pay any attention to Zhang Qi's change in attitude, as all of it was within the scope of his expectations, and he did not find it strange at all. He dismissively replied, "Stop speaking rubbish, bring me to see your appraiser. I want to auction off these pills at this coming end-of-month auction." Zhang Qi cusped his hands in gratitude once again and led Xiao Chen towards the inner areas. As they made their way in, Zhang Qi tried to fish for information about his origins. Of course, Xiao Chen was not fooled and spoke a bunch of half-truths to throw him off. Looking at Xiao Chen's departing figure, the people in the quiet hall quickly turned to noisy discussion again after half a day. The sounds of people discussing rose and fell in succession. This alchemist is actually here to auction things away. Old Chen, do you remember when the Linlang Pavilion last auctioned medicinal pills? During the large-scale auction last year, there were some grade 3 pills. I think that this year's large-scale auction could be held in advance this year. These pills that the mysterious man have brought to the table are definitely superior to grade 3 pills. Nonsense. How could grade 3 pills be so fragrant? I have seen grade 4 pills before, and they can't hold a candle to that fragrance earlier. A person beside the man who spoke earlier refuted him immediately. How could it be? To refine a grade 4 pill, one must at least be a rank 4 alchemist. Within the whole Luoji prefecture, there are only a handful of rank 4 alchemists. Why would they come to our insignificant Mohe city? In a short moment, within the Great Hall, there were intense debates about what grade these mysterious pills could possibly be at. At this moment, within the inner area, the pill appraiser, Hu Lao, had his forehead filled with sweat as he struggled to assess the grade of Xiao Chen's pills. Fasting pill. After consuming one, an individual would not have any need for eat or drink for the duration of an entire month. What kind of inconceivable pill was this? It was totally unheard of in the Great Qin nation. The appraisers of Linlang Pavilion were naturally not bad. They were all nurtured by the Linlang Pavilion itself. They had to go through many examinations before they could be assigned to a pavilion to officially work as an appraiser. Furthermore, the appraisers of Linlang Pavilion would start from the smallest locations first and then slowly move up. Thus, even the appraiser of Mohe City's Linlang Pavilion would be equivalent to any of the other appraisers from the auction houses of the larger prefecture cities. Hu Lao looked carefully at the pill in his hand. He was sure that this pill was not just casually made by just anyone. When it came to its fragrance, its color, or its smoothness, they were all by no means something a regular person could accomplish. However, he was sure that he had never heard of any pill in this world called fasting pill. This rendered him having not the foggiest idea on how to evaluate it, which proved to be a massive headache for him as time trickled on. Xiao Chen gently took a sip of the tea placed on the tea table beside him as he observed Hu Lao repeatedly attempting to make sense of the pill. He interjected in an impatient manner, "Hu Lao, after inspecting it for so long, can you give me a price already?" Hu Lao wiped the sweat off his forehead and decided, in the end, to play it safe. With an apologetic tone, he said, "Would you be willing to please wait for a moment? I am unable to appraise this pill, so allow me to invite the pavilion master over." Xiao Chen placed the teacup down and made a hand gesture that indicated for him to do as he pleased. After all, he was quite confident in Linlang Pavilion's ability to appraise this fasting pill. After Hu Lao took his leave, he quickly headed to the 4th floor of Linlang Pavilion and went to the room of the pavilion master. However, he found that the doors were shut and there were 2 guards on duty in front of the doors. The doors of the pavilion master's room were normally open. In the event of the otherwise, it usually meant he was receiving an important guest and that it was inconvenient to interrupt him. However, the current matter at hand was urgent. If news traveled of Linlang Pavilion's inability to appraise a pill, its reputation would take a big hit. "Brothers, I need to meet the pavilion master, can you please inform him?" Hu Lao said in a heavy tone. The guards outside naturally recognized Hu Lao. However, the pavilion master had strictly instructed them to not let anyone interrupt him. The guards were somewhat put on a spot. Hu Lao, the pavilion master, is currently meeting with an important guest. He has instructed us to not let anyone disturb him. Hu Lao felt somewhat disappointed, for it was as he had expected. However, when he thought of Xiao Chen's impatient demeanor, he was under the impression that Xiao Chen might leave if he kept him waiting. Thus, he urgently added, "I need to find the pavilion master for something very important. Would you two please help me out here? I will take responsibility for anything that happens." The guards were once again placed in a difficult position. The position of the appraisers in the Linlang pavilion were extremely high, to the point that even the pavilion master displayed excessive decorum in front of them. The positions of these two guards were vastly inferior to Hu Lao's. If it truly were some major matter, then they might get implicated. However, the pavilion master had indeed instructed them to not let anyone disturb him. Seeing the two men hesitate, Hu Lao hardened his heart and said in a cold voice, "This matter is extremely important. If this is foiled as a result of this, don't blame me for not reminding you." Upon hearing this, the two guards finally chose to compromise and let Hu Lao in. "Hu Lao, let us say this first. If the pavilion master blames anyone, you have to shoulder all the responsibility." Hu Lao nodded his head and immediately rushed in. Within the room, the pavilion master appeared to be in an excellent mood. He smiled at the girl dressed in a man's clothes across from him. "Fei Shui, you have been here for a few days already, and only now do you remember Uncle Nangong. How could you?" Dressed in a man's attire, the alert Feng Fei Shui gently smiled. "Uncle Yan, have I not come already?" Pointing to the tea leaves on the table, she continued speaking, "I know that you like the Jun Mountain Silver Needle tea. I have purchased half their stock from Wenchuan Tea Shop in the imperial capital just for you." When Nangong Yan heard this, he laughed loudly. It appeared that he actually did not mind Feng Fei Shui coming to visit him a few days late. "I haven't seen you for 6 years already. You have grown up to be so pretty now. You must have the young masters of the imperial capital coiled around your fingers, right?" When Feng Fei Shui heard this, she blushed slightly and smiled. "Uncle Yan, stop teasing me." Nangong Yan seemed to remember something as he suddenly said, "Ah, I almost forgot, you have already been betrothed to someone. How is that lad from the Bai clan? I'll check him out for you when I have time. If he is not good, then I will help you cancel this engagement." Feng Fei Shui felt warmth surge in her heart. She believed that the old man in front of her would definitely stay true to his words. He definitely had the abilities to do so. Not to mention that this old man had always treated her like he was his granddaughter. At this moment, the sound of Hu Lao's footsteps could be heard. Nangong Yan's expression changed, irritation quickly building on his face. He had already instructed the guards to not let anyone in, so why was there still someone coming to interrupt them? Hu Lao noticed the atmosphere in the room, as well as saw Nangong Yan's expression, so he knew that Nangong Yan was waiting for him to explain himself. If he did not have a good reason, then he would definitely be in trouble. After all, this pavilion master in front of him had a different status compared to other pavilion masters. He did not have to completely follow the rules. After he paid his respects, Hu Lao spoke in an apologetic tone. "I'm sorry for this interruption, but the matter at hand concerns the reputation of our Linlang pavilion. Thus, I had no choice but to come and bother you." After giving Feng Fei Shui a glance, Hu Lao fell quiet. Nangong Yan understood what he meant and replied, "Speak, there are no outsiders here." Hu Lao nodded his head and took out the jade bottle filled with fasting pills, passing it to Nangong Yan right away. "A mysterious alchemist came today, and he wants to auction these pills. I was unable to appraise the grade." Nangong Yan received the jade bottle, but what he saw shocked him. He was very clear on Hu Lao's abilities to appraise pills. Regardless of theory or knowledge, there were few superior to him. To think there was actually a pill that he could not appraise. What kind of pill was this? He took out a fasting pill and brought it to the front of his eye to inspect it carefully. The fragrance exuded by the pill in front of him entered into Nangong Yan's nose. "What a fragrant pill," Nangong Yan praised in his heart. In his sea of consciousness, within a boundless mental world, there was a green sphere that was continuously rotating. There were boundless green ripples emerging in that mental space. A green energy thread that could not be seen with the naked eye shot out from Nangong Yan's sea of consciousness and made a connection to the fasting pill. In an instant, Nangong Yan had used his spiritual awareness to enter into the inner area of the pill. There was a mist-like chi inside it obstructing his view, and the further he went in, the thicker the mist became. Nangong Yan turned pale with fright, as he had never encountered such a situation before. If he did not leave now, he might not be able to come out later. He pulled back his spiritual awareness with some lingering fears. Looking at the stripes and the luster of the pill, Nangong Yan's expression turned grave. He was one of the best at alchemy within the great Qin nation. Just by taking a look at any pill, he was able to tell the refining method and the skill level of the alchemist. However, this pill in front of him was actually able to stop his spiritual awareness from entering the core of the pill. He was sure that the refining method was not the mainstream method of the continent. It could very possibly be a long-lost ancient method of refining pills. Thinking of this, Nangong Yan got very excited. He had been stuck at the peak of a rank 7 alchemist for many years already. Having lacked the opportunity to increase his rank all along, this could be his chance. Outsiders only believed that the 7th rank of the alchemist vocation was the peak, but he knew that it was definitely far from the peak. He had seen with his own eyes alchemists of even higher ranks. The distance between the two was like that of heaven and earth. Did that person say what pill this is? Nangong Yan calmed himself down. Hearing Nangong Yan's tone, Hu Lao finally relaxed. This pill had indeed aroused the pavilion master's interest. He nodded his head and explained. He called this the fasting pill. After consuming this pill, there would not be any need to eat or drink anything for a month. I have never heard of this kind of pill before, so I had no idea as to what kind of price I can set. Fasting pill. Hearing those miraculous effects, Nangong Yan felt shocked, and then he laughed out loud. I was right, Hu Lao. I will remember your contributions. After this month's auction, I will transfer you to a prefecture city's Linlang Pavilion branch. Hu Lao felt joyful in his heart and hurriedly cupped his hands in gratitude. To be promoted from Mohe City to a prefecture city was a promotion of 3 ranks. He was originally under the impression that he would never be able to reach such heights in his lifetime, but who knew that this dream of his would be realized in one go like this? Feng Feishui, who was at the side all the while, did not understand Nangong Yan's excitement. Although it had miraculous effects, it did not seem especially useful to cultivators. Why would her uncle Yan view it with such importance? Nangong Yan looked at Feng Feishui and smiled. Girl, come with me to see this senior. See if we can gain any fortuitous encounters. This aligned with Feng Feishui's intentions, as she felt a little curious about this miraculous pill and the one behind its creation. Thus, she followed Hu Lao downstairs to the inner area of the pavilion. Soon, the 3 of them had already reached the door of the inner area. Nangong Yan threw a quick look at Xiao Chen, but his immediate response was the bitterness of disappointment. He shook his head dejectedly. With one look, he could tell Xiao Chen's strength. The strength of his core was unbelievably weak, making it obvious that this was an alchemist who had only awakened his spiritual awareness recently. Xiao Chen nervously clutched the black cloak around his body. The pressure released by Nangong Yan was too enormous. With that one look of his, he had seen through the cloak and wholly exposed everything about him under his gaze. Seeing Feng Feishui follow behind, he was shocked. Why was this woman here? Her background was indeed very mysterious. When Feng Feishui saw Xiao Chen completely covered in that black cloak, she felt incredibly shocked. Based on the blood vessels she could see, she could identify this person as Xiao Chen. She had never thought that he truly was an alchemist, not to mention one who was able to shock Nangong Yan. Although her heart was in turmoil, Feng Feishui did not change her expression. Since Xiao Chen had dressed in such a style, then he definitely did not wish to reveal his identity. If she behaved in too shocked a manner, it would cause suspicion on Nangong Yan's side. This little brother, were you the one who refined this fasting pill? Although Nangong Yan was not able to see his face, he was able to extrapolate his age and immediately bluntly asked this question. Xiao Chen did his best to calm himself. Although Nangong Yan did not intentionally release his own aura, the tiny green sphere in Xiao Chen's sea of consciousness could not help but keep trembling. This was an instinctive fear stemming from the core when meeting with a high-ranked alchemist whose core exceeded his. Xiao Chen, who was under the cloak, gently released his breath and rapidly flitted through his thoughts. In a short moment, he replied in a deep voice, "No, this was refined by my master." Indeed, it was as I expected, Nangong Yan thought in his heart as he went on a happy streak of inquiries, "How may I address your master?" This old man recognizes all of the alchemists within the great Qin nation. This pill was refined by myself, how could there be a master? Xiao Chen laughed coldly in his heart. As of now, his mental state had already recovered. He coldly replied, "Is Linlang Pavilion running a business, or does it investigate the backgrounds of those that step into its space? If you are not interested in making a deal, I'll be taking my leave." Speaking up to that point, Xiao Chen decisively stood up to leave. Nangong Yan was startled. He knew that he was too hasty and had been too rude. He hurriedly went up and backtracked as hard as he came on in the beginning. "My young friend, please don't go, this old man has been too rude." Xiao Chen stopped and replied with his back facing Nangong Yan, "I can stay, but I will only talk about business." Nangong Yan gave Hu Lao a glance. Hu Lao registered the gesture immediately and swiftly went on over to usher Xiao Chen back into his seat with a smile. "If you are here to auction this, then there is no place in Mohe City more suitable than Linlang Pavilion. Then would you, Pavilion Master, please set the price?" Xiao Chen looked at Nangong Yan and requested indifferently. Nangong Yan muttered to himself for a while before deciding, "This fasting pill. Linlang Pavilion will start the auction for this at 10,000 silver taels per pill, what do you think?" Xiao Chen did some calculation in his head. 20 fasting pills would be a starting price of 200,000 silver taels. Following the rules of the auction house, he could obtain 30% of the starting price as a kind of deposit, which was 60,000 silver taels. That should be enough for his short-term usage. In that case, it's settled. These 20 fasting pills will be left here for Linlang Pavilion to auction. Please draft the contract now. Nangong Yan smiled gently, "No hurry. I want to discuss something with you. Out of the 20 fasting pill, I would like to purchase 10 for myself. Of course, I will not take advantage of you. For however much this fasting pill sells for at the auction, I will add an additional twofold." The deal did not result in any loss for Xiao Chen, so it did not matter who he sold it. "For these 10 fasting pills, you have to give me 30% of the starting price first, as the rules state. As for the other 10 pills reserved for you, you have to give me threefold of 30% of the starting price. That will be a total of 130,000 silver taels." Nangong Yan nodded his head, "That is not a problem. According to the normal procedures, Linlang charges a 10% handling fee. I can reduce this to 5% for you. My friend, if you have any more pills you wish to sell, I hope you will continue to patronize our Linlang Pavilion." This was quite an attractive offer. Without a large amount of money to spend on materials and ingredients, it would be difficult to improve as an alchemist. It would therefore be a wise move to partner with Linlang Pavilion. After signing the contract and receiving the money, Xiao Chen immediately left Linlang Pavilion. Hu Lao took out 10 fasting pills and placed them in another jade bottle before passing them to Nangong Yan. "Pavilion Master, can we directly place this into the catalog?" Nangong Yan shook his head. "Not yet, find a person to test its effects on first. In case we made a mistake." Hu Lao was startled in his heart. So even the Pavilion Master was unable to verify the effects of this pill. Ellipsis. Xiao Chen avoided attracting anyone's attention by virtue of leaving through the back door of Linlang Pavilion. He searched for an isolated area and immediately changed his get-up. Holding the banknotes, he snickered in a silly manner. This was the first chunk of money that he had earned by himself, so he felt very excited. Going to the herb shop, he purchased 100 sets of ingredients for each of both of the pills he intended to refine. After this, he still had quite a lot of money left. Giving it some more thought, he bought some things that girls would like, such as makeup or head accessories. He purchased these to give to Bao and Xiao Yulan. After purchasing everything, he ended up carrying tens of packages of various sizes. It was incredibly inconvenient, but this merely further motivated him to refine a spatial storage treasure. However, in order to do this, he had to cultivate the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation to the second layer first. Only by achieving that would he have met the basic requirement to forge equipment. His only option now was to spend a small sum of money to hire a horse carriage. Xiao Chen threw a banknote with a hefty amount ascribed to it at the owner of a horse carriage, who immediately scampered off and left behind his horse carriage. It feels great to be rich, Xiao Chen sighed in his heart. After placing all of his goods on the horse carriage, Xiao Chen felt much more at ease. The horses drawing the carriages in this world were much more docile than the ones on Earth. Xiao Chen gave driving it a try and gradually figured out the trick behind it. As he drove the carriage out of the city gates, the number of people on the road started to decrease until he could no longer see anyone save for the occasional passing traveler. Xiao Chen, who had earned such a large sum of money for the first time in his life, was at present in a very good mood. He started to sing a nonsensical song that he made up on the spot in a tone-deaf manner. The weather today is very sunny, and the scenery is great, great scenery. The butterflies are busy, as are the bees. The clattering of the horse hoofs, tilde. I am rich, rich, there is a Nokia in my left hand and a Motorola in my right. Most of the things he sang were nonsensical, as he could not remember the lyrics to any song whatsoever. Ever since he had come to this world, this was the first time he had felt this relaxed. As there were no one on the road, no one would hear his tone-deaf singing, thus he sang happily and without restraint. Ha ha. Suddenly, from the roof of the horse carriage, a bell-like laughter emerged. It was like the tinkling of a wind chime as it moved in the wind. Who is it? Xiao Chen hurriedly stopped singing and shouted sternly. He was too careless. How long had this individual been following him? He couldn't actually sense them. Drawing the lunar shadow he had placed on his back, he put down the horse reins and leapt up gently, somersaulting as he hacked towards the direction of the sound. Feng Feishui, who was on the roof, gently laughed as she avoided Xiao Chen's saber with incredibly soft movements. She somersaulted twice in the air before gracefully landing on the ground. Who knew that young Master Xiao was so talented? Aside from being able to refine medicine, he is also able to sing as well. When Xiao Chen on the roof saw the smooth and fair Feng Feishui dressed in men's clothing, he felt incredibly embarrassed. It was similar to that feeling he had once experienced when he inadvertently began singing aloud in an internet cafe while wearing headphones. Sheathing back lunar shadow, Xiao Chen smiled. I did not expect it to be Miss Feng. I did not expect such a fairy-like person to be following me, doing these kinds of sneaky things. Feng Feishui, you have disappointed me. After saying this, he even acted as though it was a serious manner and shook his head. Feng Feishui smiled gently. I did not follow you sneakily. I have been on the roof of your horse carriage even before you left the city gates. To think that not only are you not grateful to the person who sold you your medicinal cauldron, you even pulled out your saber to try and injure me. Young Master Xiao, I'm so disappointed in you too. After she said that, she imitated Xiao Chen and shook her head. This time, when he met with Feng Feishui, Xiao Chen did not feel that uneasy feeling he had when he was in Regretful Iron the last time. Furthermore, he could not feel any evil intentions coming from Feng Feishui, thus he was quite relaxed. Seeing the way Feng Feishui shook her head, Xiao Chen could not help but laugh. He jumped down from the top of the horse carriage and took out a hairpin from among his stash and tossed it at Feng Feishui before he rode onwards without pausing. Miss Feng, regardless of your intentions in following me, I am going home now. Consider this hairpin as a thank you gift for selling me the medicinal cauldron. Feng Feishui grabbed the hairpin out of the air and looked at the horse carriage galloping off into the distance. She shook her head. Idiot. Since when have you seen me use a hairpin? Indeed, the Feng Feishui who frequently dressed up as a male did not have much use for a hairpin that was normally used by a girl. Perhaps this was done intentionally by Xiao Chen, or perhaps it was unintentional. However, he had already made it quite far into the distance, so it was too late to question him about it. Feng Feishui shook her head and eventually turned around to return. By the time Xiao Chen made it back to the Xiao residence, it was already noon. His trip this time had taken the entire morning. When he drove the horse carriage to his tiny courtyard, Xiao Chen saw Bao tidying up the mess he had created in the front yard. Jumping off the horse carriage and looking at Bao frail body, Xiao Chen felt a sense of pity. He called Bao over with his hands. Put what you are doing aside for now and help me move these things. Bao immediately stopped what she was doing and ran over to him. Although Xiao Chen had told her to help him, he still had to carry the larger packages himself. As they were moving the things, Bao looked strangely at a large pile of accessories in the horse carriage. She picked up these things and carried them to Xiao Chen's room, feeling very puzzled. Seeing the things in Bao's hands, Xiao Chen smiled. I brought these for you, pick out a few for yourself, but just be sure to leave me some, as I still have to give a few to some friends. Bao felt a warmth spread in her heart. She had not expected that these things were bought for her. She was just a maid, so why did the young master buy things for her? Could it be? Thinking of those shameless things, Bao blushed again. She lowered her head and simply picked out a few clothes and head accessories, quickly running away shortly after. Xiao Chen was puzzled at this. Were the things that he had bought inadequate? Would girls not enjoy them? After all, this was the first time he had ever purchased anything for girls. In the following days, Xiao Chen began anxiously refining the essence nurturing pill and qi returning pill. He would refine pills until he exhausted all of his essence and became too mentally exhausted before resting. On the first day of refining, he had a ridiculously poor success rate. Out of 10 refinements, he would only succeed in 3. After he became more familiar with the process, his success rate began to gradually increase. However, regardless of how hard he tried, this success rate never came close to his refinement rate for the fasting pill. Xiao Chen knew that this had something to do with his abilities as an alchemist. When his abilities were insufficient, it was normal for him to have a high failure rate for pills with higher difficulty. He could not rush it and could only slowly accumulate experience to raise his ability as an alchemist. After a week, Xiao Chen had completely used up all of the medicinal ingredients he had purchased. He managed to refine 50 essence nurturing pills and 70 qi returning pills in this time frame. Evidently, he had experienced higher returns with the qi returning pill. In this week of non-stop refining, he grew more adept at controlling the Purple Thunder True Fire. As a bonus, his cultivation of the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation had reached the peak of the first layer. What gave Xiao Chen the most joy was that the green sphere in his sea of consciousness could now penetrate into the medicinal cauldron and allow him to see clearly the state of the flames and the medicinal liquid in the cauldron. It was a pity that he could not control this phenomenon. Sometimes it happened, sometimes it did not. If it could be controlled, then his success rate pertaining to pill refining would increase dramatically. At this moment, there were only about 4 more months to the promise of 10 years. The urgency in Xiao Chen's heart increased as the days went by. It was about time for him to enter Seven Horn Mountain for more bitter training. Early in the morning, Xiao Chen packed the bottles of qi returning pills and essence nurturing pills, equipped Lunar Shadow on his back, and made some other simple preparations before he prepared to leave. He also brought along the fasting pills that he had refined for the sake of this cultivating session. Young master, I have brought the washing water, can I come in? Bao's voice came in from outside the door once again. Xiao Chen revealed a smile on his face. He had not stepped out of his room for the past week. Everything that he ate and drank were specially prepared and brought to him by Bao, creating an ideal environment for alchemy. This made him feel quite grateful to her. After he opened the doors, Xiao Chen received the wash basin. After washing his face, he told Bao, who was tidying his bed up, I am going to start my secluded, bitter training from tomorrow on. Remember to stay here and look after my courtyard. Bitter training. That meant he would be leaving for a long time. Bao felt a sense of loss as she wordlessly answered Xiao Chen, continuing to tidy the bed up. Xiao Chen stepped out of the doors. Before he left, he looked at Bao's figure and smiled warmly before leaving. The morning sunlight shone down on the youth's face. The light felt really warm, filling him with fighting spirit. The next time he came back, not only would his Purple Thunder Divine Incantation be in the second layer, his own cultivation realm would be medial grade martial disciple. Xiao Chen made a solemn oath in his heart. It was as bustling as ever at the pass located at the foot of Seven Horn Mountain. Xiao Chen followed the crowd and slowly made his way up the mountain, but he did not have to pay the entry fee to enter the mountain unlike the crowd around him. The guards at the pass recognized him and solemnly kept their silence. The situation had changed, and now that Xiao Chen was no longer recognized as the trash of old, naturally, no one would mock him anymore or even dare to. After traveling for half a day and making it through the pass, the sight of the vast mountain range of Seven Horn Mountain opened up to his view, scenic and breathtaking. The cultivators who came to Seven Horn Mountain typically came for the sake of picking medicinal herbs or hunting spirit beasts. Everyone had their own agenda, thus the crowd quickly dispersed as they went to do their own thing. Continuing to travel forward, there was no longer anyone traveling on the same path as Xiao Chen. Recalling the route he had taken in the past, Xiao Chen quickly found the place that was saturated with spiritual energy. Compared to the previous time he had been here, Xiao Chen's senses were much stronger now. Before he drew near to the area, he could already feel that it had been occupied by a spirit beast. Xiao Chen felt slightly disappointed in his heart, as he originally thought that he could meet cousin Yulan. That way he would be able to avoid a battle. Bang! Bang! A 2-meter-tall spirit beast resembling a black bear trotted out heavily and slowly appeared in front of Xiao Chen's eyes. Its red eyes were glaring at him, and in the very next moment, it rushed at him while roaring furiously. Blood Moon Demonic Bear. It had the strength of a rank 2 spirit beast, which was equivalent to a human superior grade martial disciple. This was the new tyrant of the area. It was obvious from its actions that it recognized Xiao Chen as someone not to be trifled with and only wanted to scare him away. If it could drive him away, it would be able to avoid engaging in a risky battle. It was a pity that Xiao Chen needed this area. It seemed that things would not go the way the Blood Moon Demonic Bear wanted. Kai. Drawing Lunar Shadow, the energy in the spirit weapon rapidly connected with the Azure Dragon martial spirit inside Xiao Chen. He moved as fast as lightning and pushed himself off the ground, rushing towards the Blood Moon Demonic Bear. The Purple Thunder Divine incantation quickly circulated as arcs of electricity jumped around on the saber, and the mist in the forest acted like a conductor for electricity, buzzing continuously. In the vicinity around Xiao Chen, electrical flashes were being emitted incessantly in a wide radius. The flashes nearly made him look like a Tesla coil, which in turn also made him look incomparably mighty and powerful. The Blood Moon Demonic Bear, which had been capable of occupying this area all things considered, naturally did not shy away from a fight. It roared explosively as its blood-red pupils gave off a bloodthirsty gleam. It stomped ferociously at the ground, leaping rapidly towards Xiao Chen. Its huge body was actually able to move at such a speed. Bang! Cha! As they both flew towards each other, they clashed violently with each other in midair. The violent collision created a fierce shockwave. After the surrounding trees in the forest were hit by the shockwaves, they were shaken violently, causing their leaves to fall and scatter everywhere like snow in winter. The front limbs of the Blood Moon Demonic Bear firmly grasped onto Xiao Chen's lunar shadow. Relying on the Azure Dragon martial spirit in his body, Xiao Chen was able to break even with the Blood Moon Demonic Bear that was equivalent to a superior grade martial disciple. It was a pity to him as the Lunar Shadow Saber would be able to display more of the Azure Dragon martial spirit's strength if it were of a higher grade. The power of that strike would definitely be able to behead this spirit beast easily. However, against the Blood Moon Demonic Bear which could only use brute force, Xiao Chen still had the Purple Thunder Divine incantation. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint, the electrical energy on Lunar Shadow traveled via the front limbs of the Blood Moon Demonic Bear and invaded its body. The Blood Moon Demonic Bear convulsed and fell down with a loud crash shortly after. Xiao Chen quickly slashed 3 times in the air. With the power of the Azure Dragon, instead of falling to the ground, he rose even higher. He then somersaulted in midair and landed gently on a thick tree branch. He sheathed the saber and focused his attention on the Blood Moon Demonic Bear currently continuously convulsing on the ground. With just a thought, one of the clouds beside the Azure Dragon became significantly thinner as a huge amount of essence flowed to Xiao Chen's left hand. With a flick of his finger, he sent a stream of purple flames towards the Blood Moon Demonic Bear like an arrow-shaped flaming projectile. This move alone had exhausted a large amount of Xiao Chen's essence in an instant. It streaked through the air and struck the body of the Blood Moon Demonic Bear. Pooh! A deep red glow appeared on the body of the Blood Moon Demonic Bear. After a while, the entire body of the Blood Moon demonic bear was lit on fire, turning it into a purple flaming bear. Within the fire, the Blood Moon demonic bear roared painfully. When Xiao Chen saw this scene from his vantage atop the tree branch, he actually shook his head in dissatisfaction. Although the purple thunder true fire was tyrannical, when it encountered a cultivator or spirit beast of a higher grade and they had some resistances against it, it would be very difficult to break through the protective screen of essence to injure their body. Once the purple thunder true fire exhausted all the energy supplied to it, it would naturally be extinguished. After that, it would no longer be a threat to anyone. Just as it was now. Although the Blood Moon demonic bear looked like it was in a terrible situation, it actually did not suffer any major damage. What was being burnt was actually the essence on the surface of its body. It was not actually hurting its body. Or else it would have already turned into a pile of ashes. However, it was an unpleasant situation for the bear at the moment. Not only did it have to exhaust a large amount of essence to suppress the strange purple fire, the temperature of the fire was also unbearable. The purple flames burned for a whole minute before being extinguished. At this moment, the Blood Moon demonic bear's fur was entirely burnt black. There was black smoke coming out from its nose and mouth, and it now seemed like a piece of black charcoal, which made it look less intimidating than it did before. Xiao Chen, who was waiting for the right moment, leapt down from the tree, brandishing his saber to chop down at it. The Blood Moon demonic bear roared angrily and smashed its paw towards Xiao Chen. There was a huge recoiling force coming from the blade of the saber. Xiao Chen took a gentle step back, avoiding being directly hit by that forceful blow in their brief exchange. The Blood Moon demonic bear seemed to be in a frenzy as it sent paw smashes after paw smashes at him. The amount of force behind each paw smash seemed to have increased by half as opposed to earlier. Xiao Chen clearly understood that the Blood Moon demonic bear would not be able to maintain such a state for long. Once this streak of attacks made in reckless abandon ended, he would be able to slaughter it like cattle at his whim. Xiao Chen brandished his saber and continued to parry each incursion, not clashing head-on with it. After a while, the Blood Moon demonic bear started to show traces of fatigue. Xiao Chen had a strange smile on his face as he made the same hand motions as he did before when condensing the purple thunder true fire, as though he was going to shoot it out again. The Blood Moon demonic bear seemed to have an aghast expression. It stood firmly on the ground with its four limbs and retreated a few steps. A protective screen of deep red essence completely covered the Blood Moon demonic bear without leaving any gaps. Looks like this beast was truly afraid of the purple thunder true fire. Xiao Chen flung his empty hand around, smiling in his heart. This deep red essence shield should be the defensive technique that the Blood Moon demonic bear used earlier. Seeing Xiao Chen's mocking gaze, the Blood Moon demonic bear was now thoroughly infuriated. Its eyes became even more demonic looking as it stomped the ground repeatedly in ire unmatched, producing a lot of loud, angry noises. Paper tiger, Xiao Chen looked at it with disdain. You are not worth playing with anymore. Die. Divine Thunder Break. As Xiao Chen shouted, his body gave off a resplendent electrical light. Superior grade yellow ranked martial technique, Thunder Break. Lightning tore through the air, and like a sharp arrow piercing through a wooden board, the red protective screen of the Blood Moon demonic bear now had a massive hole. Purple Thunder True Fire. Shoot. The white cloud beside the azure dragon in his body turned transparent, indicating that he had used up one of the three clouds, which also meant Xiao Chen had exhausted one-third of his essence. The strange and tyrannical purple flame went through the hole in an instant, drilling a black hole into the body of the Blood Moon demonic bear. This purple fire was burning its body. The black hole quickly grew larger, eventually consuming its entire body. The Blood Moon demonic bear continuously let out loud cries of misery. It ran around non-stop in an attempt to put out the flame. However, regardless of what it did, it was to no avail. After a while, only a complete set of bones comprised of its skeletal frame and a pile of ashes were left on the ground. If the people who came to hunt spirit beasts saw this, they would definitely be cursing and swearing. The Blood Moon demonic bear could be said to be the most profitable spirit beast in the outskirts of Sevenhorn Mountain. Its paw, gallbladder, skin, and heart all had a rather high market value. If they were fortunate enough and were able to obtain its spirit core, it would be like striking the jackpot. It was rare to find someone who would completely burn and eviscerate the Bloodmoon demonic bear to this degree. Looking at the skeleton on the ground, Xiao Chen did not feel that it was a pity. He was not here to kill spirit beasts. If he needed money, he could just refine some pills. There was no need to waste time killing spirit beasts and collecting their parts and viscera. Looking for a sturdy tree branch, Xiao Chen strung up the skeleton of the Bloodmoon demonic bear. This would serve as a warning to both cultivators or spirit beast coming to look for trouble. After he tidied everything up, Xiao Chen took out a fasting pill and swallowed it. He circulated his energy to aid in the absorption of the medicinal contents before he took out the essence nurturing pill and swallowed it as well. Seating in a crossed-legged position, he began to circulate the Purple Thunder divine incantation. Sinking down into his consciousness, Xiao Chen could clearly feel the medicinal effect of the essence nurturing pill. The spiritual energy that had been absorbed into his body was now thrice as dense. This would boost Xiao Chen's cultivating speed significantly. The Purple Thunder divine incantation was just a cultivating technique. It was different from the realms of martial cultivation. There was no bottleneck to breaking through to the next layer. Once they reached a certain level, they would naturally enter into the next layer. Furthermore, the first layer of the Purple Thunder divine incantation was just the foundation. Even without the help of the essence nurturing pill, he would be able to break through to the second layer within the next 3 or 4 months. However, the time for the promise of 10 years was fast approaching, and the amount of time Xiao Chen had left was limited. If he wanted to defeat Zhang He by slowly improving, it would simply be foolish thinking. There was more than an entire realm of difference between a medial grade martial master and an inferior grade martial disciple. There was naturally a great difference between a martial master and martial disciple. Once one became a martial master, one would be able to project their essence into the atmosphere. The essence stored in the body would be of much higher purity and quantity than what is available to a martial disciple. The most important thing was the proficiency they had in controlling their martial spirit. After advancing to this realm, the martial spirit would be able to leave the body. They would be able to freely control their martial spirit, just as Xiao Yulan did, using her martial spirit to leave her body and successfully slay a martial grand master. Even if there was some trickery involved, when a martial disciple goes up against a martial grand master, regardless of what said person does, they would never be able to kill a martial grand master. Within the next 4 months of time, regardless of how talented he was, he would not be able to break through to martial master. Thus, for Xiao Chen to defeat Zhang He, he could only bank on the miraculous Purple Thunder divine incantation. Once the Purple Thunder divine incantation advanced to the second layer, there would be a qualitative leap in his abilities. He would acquire the most foundational sense of an immortal cultivator, spiritual sense. With spiritual sense, he would be capable of performing the mystical spells written down in the Compendium of Cultivation, and last but not least, he would be able to draw talismans, forge equipment, and even lay down formations. This was how Xiao Chen intended to surpass his realm as a martial disciple and defeat the martial master Zhang He.